Phillips, of course, will be bringing us up to date throughout the race with their scoring service here at Amaroo Park. We have additional camera position to bring you all the action down from Winfield Corner. That's the camera you can see the picture from at the moment as the cars circulate round. That's where, of course, the Formula Ford went off a little earlier into the tyre bank down there. Car number 42 on the grid is Terry Daly, co-driving with Peter Hopwood. I'd like to welcome network stations right around Australia for this telecast of the CRC Chemicals 300, brought to you in part by Goodyear. Goodyear steels for your wheels, and by CRC Chemicals. Peter Brock, 05, former national touring car champion, the man everyone thought had a mortgage on winning touring car titles and long-distance enduros. The man who seems to have taken a little of the thunder away this year is, of course, the sentimental rock victim and telethon recipient from Bathurst, and that's Dick Johnson, all the way from Queensland. The fella's going to be pretty busy, because following this race he'll be lining up in the Barclays TR7 Pro-Am race, the final this afternoon, so he's got plenty of driving to do here at Amaroo Park. Trouble there for Charlie O'Brien, but has he fixed it? We'll have to wait and see. He has Barry Jones just in front of him. They had problems, a few dilemmas there right on the starting line. I think they have the engine fired. Charlie O'Brien is ready to go. Another one of the big boys from the Queensland area. When I say a big boy, I think Charlie has shed more weight than any other driver I've seen in the past 12 months. Very aggressive driver. Likes to drive wheel to wheel. Behind him you can see Colin Bond, Steve Masterton in the Masterton Home Capris, Kev Bartlett in the Channel 9 Camaro, Murray Carter on the outside, number 18, the Ford. The Darrell Lee Chocolates car with Barry Jones right behind Dick Johnson, and also Warren Cullen in the Commodore that will be co-driven in this year's James Hardy 1000 by none other than Alan Jones. 35, another of the cars, it's the Phil Alexander entry, and right at the back you can see the black car, that's Alan Grayson, the JPS BMW. And boy does he have a job and a half on his hands to clear all this traffic. Number 47, Brian Callahan. Terry Daly, number 42. I think we're ready. About 10 seconds away from the start of the CRC Chemicals 300. The touring cars, the big guns, they've come to Amaroo Park for what promises to be a tremendous race. Flag is up. Who will it be to lead to the top of the hill for the first time? They're off. And getting off smartly indeed is Dick Johnson along with Peter Brock, but I think Brock has won the start. Momentarily coming up the hill, Johnson selects another gear and tries to go with him as they reach the top of the hill. Over the top of Marlborough and down into the right-hander at Dunlop, and this is an important race in an important corner, and Johnson has come from behind. He was 30 metres behind. He's taken Brock, and it's now Bob Muir who drops into third, and coming up through the pack is Colin Bond.
One of the real dramas in the race, which went on in the pits, was Peter Williamson, who was in 12th place. He ruined a gearbox in practice this morning, and they changed the gearbox in 15 minutes and got him to the starting line with 30 seconds to spare. So Willow is out there in car 77, and out in front is Dick Johnson in car 17.
Well, Bob Muir made a brilliant start, and the Army Reserve Falcon drops up into third place, and behind him is Barry Jones. The next is Warren Cullen with Kevin Bartlett making a run down the inside of him. But the dice is back at the front with Dick Johnson leading from Peter Brock, then Muir. They were followed by Cullen. The next one is Jones, then Kevin Bartlett, Murray Carter, and then Fred Geisler coming up smartly with the Masterton Team Capris. Okay, they're one lap in to the CRC Enduro, and it's Dick Johnson. The big cheer coming from the tremendous number of spectators here today as Johnson goes through to take over the lead from Peter Brock. But Brock is not going to drop that far back behind him. There's Muir in third. Next one is Warren Cullen, then Kevin Bartlett. Caught out wide that time was Barry Jones, a rather remarkable move that wide out, and I think he's probably dropped about midway on the train.
The actual driver of Peter Williamson's car is not Williamson himself, but John Smith, the former Pacific ace, and his gearbox failed when he came out to start the race.
Unbelievable.
And changed the gearbox and started the race in 15 minutes. Incredible. We'll see his progress a little later on, because Willow was quite confident on improving on his performance last year when he came third.
Okay, coming on to the sweeper, back into the pit area. Gary Wilkinson is down there. We have some problems, of course, with one of the Mazda RX-7s.
Peter McLeod is the car.
Okay, and another car in trouble here also is Bob Holden, number 13. Bob's in there as well with some problem with the Escort. The The race continues, though, with Dick Johnson of Queensland. They're 2 laps in. That's 153 laps remain in the CRC race. And here's a good dice with Warren Cullen working the inside here on Bobby Hill, the Army Reserve, and takes over 3rd place in the race. Dick Johnson, race leader, out of Honda, looking good. Coming down towards the right-hander at Winfield. Peter Brock back behind him, and look at the lead that established over the rest of the field.
Both these leading cars planning to make only one stop, and Johnson planning to go all the way by himself. Brock may, it depends how he feels and what the race is like, or else he might hand over to his teammate John Harvey. But the Ford is expecting to go in for tyres and fuel around 78 laps. Peter Brock was telling me he can go about 120 if need be. Oh, that's looks like a fire. Now
you have drama up that top end of the circuit.
We can see the fire engines and the units there, but we just can't see who's involved. You can see as much as we and know as much as we do, but there's certainly a fire going there at the moment. A lot of smoke as the marshals come pouring in to try and put it out. It's blazing away. It's not petrol so much at the moment, by the way it's burning, but there is definitely a fire going there as the field still streams through. It's at the top of the circuit, and the one part of it that's shielded from our cameras and also from our sight here in the commentary position.
Well, that's bad luck, but they're certainly using all of the fire material up there, all of the extinguishers. You can notice the driver just can't pick it by the helmet at the moment.
Maybe Charlie O'Brien. It's I don't want to put the jinx on anyone, but it's the sort of stature of the man, and also the helmet is painted in a somewhat similar way. Driving the Citizen Watches car. It is O'Brien. We believe this car is up there.
Well, we've got a Queenslander still in front, and one Queenslander who has just exited through a fire in the car at the back part of the course. Dick Johnson, the race leader. Peter Brock is in 2nd, and Warren Cullen is in 3rd.
Brock well stationed behind, as I was saying just when we swung to the fire. Brock planning to go in as many as 120 laps before he has to make a stop for fuel. But he says tyres will be what decides when he comes in, and he will see how the tyres feel. When he gets down to the canvas, he says the car starts twitching, and then he'll go in and change the rubber. But he wants to stay just within station of Johnson, because under the present plans, Johnson will fit first, and that puts Brock into a fairly commanding position. If he can stay as close as this and keep his eye on his man, the race could well and truly be won on the efficiency of the pit crews. Each driver only planned to make one stop, and they're already a long way ahead of the rest of the field.
It's almost a reenactment of last year's race. There's the Gary Wilmington, Bob Stevens, Betsy Nightclub Ford with some problem changing a front tyre there, as you can see. Certainly an unscheduled stop. Nobody would want to be in the pits at this stage of the CRC race. Maybe at half distance, yes, but certainly not at this stage. And again, we have the information at the top of the hill that we believe to be Charlie O'Brien. Yes, it is, in fact, Charlie O'Brien. You just see the Citizen patch on the back, and they have a raging fire by the look of it going at the top of the hill. And in fact, we'll wait for information from that point. All we know is that if there is a fire, that Charlie O'Brien is quite okay because he was out of the car and directing the operations there.
The smoke is so bad that it might in fact have some effect on the race, Mike. Its visibility is very poor on the top of the mountain now with the dense smoke, almost like a bushfire. Whether he set fire to some of the surrounding scrub or not, I don't know.
Okay, Dick Johnson coming up the hill, leading from Peter Brock.
And the McLeod Rotary Mazda that was the first call of the pits has just gone out again, having lost something like 4 laps. Brock is closer. There's no doubt that he's made up just a couple of car lengths and maintaining station, and both these front runners, while they're outdistancing the field, are running fairly comfortably. And that's the view they've got. They can't see a thing through there with the smoke from the Charlie O'Brien car pours across the top of the circuit. Bad luck for O'Brien, who only won last weekend in a Formula Pacific race. He was the winner on aggregate on the 3rd round of the National Panasonic Series, an exciting series for the next year's senior category in Australian single-seater racing. But not such a good day for Charlie O'Brien today.
Dick Johnson leads Peter Brock, Warren Cullen, and Kevin Bartlett making a run on Cullen down towards Winfield Corner. There's 1st and 2nd in the race. Cullen is 3rd, Bartlett is 4th. At this stage, Johnson with, I wouldn't say a comfortable buffer over Peter Brock. Brock would be, I think, quite happy at this stage to just sit there, let Dick Johnson do all of the grandiose work, although he was held up very badly that time by an overlapped car who changed direction halfway through the corner. Okay, here's Brock now trying to emerge from that slower car. I think that was Bob Holden's car, actually, and may have been caught in the smoke there, but that's given Johnson, I think, a slightly larger lead, has it? Yes, just a little. Heading down towards the right-hander at Winfield Corner, and here he comes, Dick Johnson, the True Blue 17 Falcon, the Australian Touring Car Champion.
The leading 6 cars at the moment consists of 3 Falcons, with the 6th car being Murray Carter's. You have 2 Commodores and Kevin Bartlett's Chevrolet Camaro making up the top 6.
And in fact, Bartlett has passed Cullen. So Kevin Bartlett in the Channel 9 Camaro has now emerged into 3rd place in the race.
Kevin concerned about brakes and tyres, although brakes won't be such a problem as they were at Bathurst last year, because now he has discs all around and so doesn't have the stopping problems. You may recall that rather violent interview I had with him at Mount Panorama, where he, in the heat of the moment, was having a few nasty things to say about people who lay down the rules for races and won't allow him to run his brakes. Well, he's got the brakes he wanted, but he is concerned on such a tight and demanding track as Amaroo about whether his tyres are going to last. Peter Brock, in fact, was saying that he likes to get his tyres warm and looks for the occasional corner where he can throw the tail or even understeer a bit at the front, just to put some warmth into the rubber and make sure they grip properly. Dick Johnson driving the way he knows best, which is to go as hard as he can and fast as he can, and just to see what happens. I don't mean he's not a tactician. He's a real racer, that's all. And he likes to go hard. He's won the National Touring Car title this year. The final round up at Lakeside in Queensland between these two was a magnificent affair. Whoever won the race won the title, and Johnson got in front at the start, and that's the way it stayed, and he won the race by 0.2 of a second. So it was that slim margin that determined this year's National Touring Car Champion. The fire seems to have eased up on the top of the track, but there's still a lot of light smoke, the residue of whatever disaster has befallen Charlie O'Brien's Citizen Commodore.
Left-hander at Honda Corner, 17, Australia. Actually, could well have the right to carry number 1, but I think he's quite happy to carry 17, the race number that has always been attributed to Dick Johnson and a blue Ford. And here he is. I think Brock has gained a little ground on him in the last lap or so. Brock keeping him fairly well in his sights at this stage. Kevin Bartlett back in 3rd place, and just behind Bartlett, of course, running in 4th place
was Warren Cullen.
Warren Cullen.
That's a close race, and behind them there's a magnificent scrap going on for 5th place. There are about 3 cars nose to tail, with Bobby Muir's car just leading the Murray Carter Falcon. Murray Carter probably the sentimental favourite of more Australians than anyone else. Maybe not Dick Johnson, as he has all of Queensland solidly behind him, I'd say.
We have Peter Williamson's car coming down to Winfield Corner at the moment, but dragging something, which we'll pick up for you shortly. Okay, there's our race leader going through, still running it nicely, not doing anything that he shouldn't be doing. And here is John Smith driving the Peter Williamson Toyota. And as you can see, he's got back of the...
It looked like a fuel hose or something. It was a long hose of some sort, or that type of thing. I don't think it's from the car. He's hit something, or bumped another car possibly, as the front spoiler has been damaged. And what appears to be a red hose with a nozzle at either end is trailing from the back.
Goodness gracious me.
Up goes his hand as merely to recognise or to acknowledge the signals of the marshals there, is not to slow down. I doubt that whether he knows what he's got. I don't think it's anything from the car, as Peter raises mushrooms on the side. But it may mean that he'll be black flagged, which means the marshals or the stewards of the meeting will give him the black flag and his number to come in the pits and take it off, if they regard as being dangerous either to himself or other cars. It can't be doing any good, and I don't know what it is, because I've never seen anything like it on the motor car. It's something he's picked up from somewhere, and he's hit something, as you can see, gone off. Whether it's something to do with the firefighting up the top of the track, it may be one of the hoses from the fire engine that he may just have picked up as he went over the top, and in fact he could have run over some debris from the crash. We'll try and find the answers for you fairly soon when we return to Amaroo Park and the CRC 300.
The action's hotting up down here in the pits now, because Peter Williamson's Celica has been black flagged, Bobby Morris.
Well, it appears to have run over some sort of a hose on or off the circuit. They're pulling the front spoiler off the car and trying to release this hose. It doesn't appear to have done any damage to him, except that it's cost him a lot of time in the pits.
Well, John Smith is at the wheel of the car. You can see that the crew are frantically underneath the car at the moment, trying to extricate this hose. Now, where the devil he's picked it up, I don't know. The front spoiler, as Bobby said, has been damaged, so John Smith obviously has been out in the dirt at some stage and has picked up this enormous length of cable that's wrapped itself on the underside of the car, and they're working frantically to clear it and get the vehicle back on the track. Other than that, it's been pretty quiet down here. Peter McLeod was back in very early in his Mazda RX-7 with a fuel problem. Gary Wilmington had a tyre change, and the car, I think, is blowing a lot of oil since. In fact, it's back in at the pits at the other end. But John Smith, as you can see, they've disentangled that piece of hose and is getting back on the track, but of course that's going to put him at least one lap down as he goes back on the track. We take you back now to our central competent position with Mike Raymond and Evan Green.
Okay, thank you very much, Gary. Well, Gary, of course, being down in the pit area, is probably not well aware of the hose situation or where it was picked up. In all probability, it was up somewhere where the incident involved Charlie O'Brien at the top of the hill. But anyway, he's through and he's free of the trailing hoses.
Oh, there's someone in strife too with the steam running from the engine. You can see the rotary engine Mazda, the only Mazda RX-3. Oh, flame coming out the back, and a lot of strife for Phil Alexander.
We have a good race going, let me tell you, with our race leader still, of course, Dick Johnson.
We're going to have a fire there, I think, by the sort of smoke that's pouring from Alexander's car. Talking of smoke, Gary Wilmington brought his Falcon into the pits, pouring smoke there, and we may have a sort of bit of a bushfire going on from the flames that spread from the Commodore of Charlie O'Brien. There's petrol running down the drain. You can see it's quite a hazardous sort of situation up there. The field having to slow down as they go through. The fire seems to be generally out of the way, and the two leaders still running around in station with no more than 4 lengths between them. You can see Brock just coming into view as he brakes a little later than Johnson. And if Brock doesn't have the power, he has imagined that he's at least 100 horsepower down on the Falcon during the year. He runs a 5-litre engine, the Falcon runs 5.8 litres, and Brock just hasn't had the blast off the line and up the hills that Johnson has had. But around this circuit, which is more of a handling one than a high-speed one, Brock would be rather happy to be where he is at the moment, I think. Well within touch, you can see the gap yourself. Everything's very much dependent on a reliable run at these sorts of speeds. What the other traffic does, because they've got a lot of cars to thread their way through, because they'll lap some of these cars as many as 10 times in the 155 laps, and of course the pit stops. And it could well be the pit stops that determine who wins this race.
Well, Dick Johnson, race leader. Peter Brock placed in second. Kevin Bartlett is placed in third. Warren Cullen is fourth. Fred Geisler is in fifth place. Murray Carter is in sixth.
They just passed Terry Daly's Capri, one of 4 Ford Capris in the race. The second or third rather most common make, with both Commodore and Falcon having 5 each, then the Capris with 4. 12 different model cars altogether in this race. But people came to see a Falcon versus Commodore race, Ford versus Holden, and that's what they've got at the moment.
Doing it quite easily, and so too is Brock on a lap or 2. You'll notice Johnson will skip away, probably pick up another 25 metres. They'll run into traffic, and Brock gets it all back again.
Just coming towards the start-finish straight now, by the way, roughly on the other part of the circuit to the car we're watching. There's quite an interesting battle with Alan Grice's BMW, now up among the group, scrapping for about 5th and 6th place, and he's just dispensed with Barry Jones's Mazda RX-7 Rotary, which was 3rd fastest in practice. So Grice has been making good progress, very gently but steadily wheeling his way through the field. He's out for a win. The big BMW, well, it's a 3.5 litre car, so it's not as big as the leading V8s in terms of engine capacity, but it's a big car for a BMW, is specifically aimed at the long distance races, and this is the first he's had the chance to try it. Bathurst is his aim. The CRC 300 is a very important exercise in that mission. Peter Brock had to go wide to avoid the little Mazda there. You can see he was put off the track. He did so well to recover it, but as he was following through, Alexandra Surplus, who was in the Corolla, in fact, the Corolla Levin, she must have seen just the one car, Johnson, and pulled over to give him room and then changed line a little bit on what is a very difficult part of the circuit. Let's be fair to her. She went back towards the outside, and Peter Brock found himself outside her, had to go on the dirt, and there's a bank there that is very close, and he did so well to recover the car. He's lost a lot of ground, though, but I think the car is intact. The big danger, as far as he's concerned, is he may have done damage to a tyre, because those racing tyres with their slick treads don't like running on rocky surfaces, and that's what Brock had to put the car into to avoid running into the Corolla of Alexandra Surplus.
Any other driver probably would have been in a lot more trouble, but Peter Brock took the situation as it came. Was forced into a terrible situation of having to drive out on the dirt amongst the rubble and the stones. There's the exact spot where it happened. So those nice, warm, slick tyres, they're picking up rocks. That is not good.
Now let's put ourselves in Peter Brock's mind. First of all, you've got Dick Johnson saying, what's happened to him? Where has Brocky gone? He'd be a bit concerned, just wondering, looking for him around the track in case he's broken down or slowed. He won't see him. He may just spot him in the mirror there. Meantime, back in the cockpit of car 05, Brock will be saying to himself, okay, settle down. All right, I lost myself a few seconds there. I can make it up. How far am I behind? I've dropped another 100 metres. All right. In, say, 5 laps, I'll try and regain that. And Brock will give himself a schedule. You start wheedling away. He won't do anything mad, but he's working hard. Look at the way his head is just a little more bowed. His hands on the wheel, working hard there. And in the pits, it's over to Gary Wilkinson.
Well, while the Peter Brock drama's been going on, there's been action in the pits. Gary Wilkinson's been in for the second time and quite a long pit stop, Bob Morris.
Yes, I think it's something that's virtually terminal, and it's in the rear end. They're going out again, but they've lost quite a considerable amount of time in the pits. Meanwhile, on the circuit, we have 2 cars to bear watching. The Warren Commodore is smoking, and also Murray Carter's Falcon. Now, this circuit is notorious for being hard on transmissions, gearboxes and rear axles, and this could be where the problem is coming from. It's a developing problem. It could see them in trouble towards halfway distance.
Okay, Mark, all yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Gary Wilkinson and Bobby Morris, who are in the pits covering the race, and you can see they couldn't be any closer to trackside reports. There are the cars coming out of the corner. Well, shortly to join us in the commentary booth here at Amaroo Park will be Charlie O'Brien, who we've been wondering exactly what happened that started a fire off up in the top part of the circuit. Charlie is now sitting in, looking a little the worse for wear. Charlie, tell us the real story behind it.
Well, Mike, it was really nobody's fault as it was going through Dunlop Loop. The throttle cable broke, and Tony Edmondson had nowhere to go but to hit the car up the back, which spun it into the bank. And it was a fairly severe sort of shunt into the bank, and it split the fuel tank open. And as the car sort of turned itself off, it ignited back through the exhaust, and the whole thing went up. I was going to have a barbecue afterwards, not that soon though.
How badly damaged is the car, Charlie?
Well, it's fairly extensively damaged around the back end. Luckily it didn't get too much into the cabin. It's just from the fuel tank back, but it took about 7 minutes or so to control the blaze.
Well, we noticed the smoke and the flames up there were there for a long time, and the real concern was that it was so dry up in that part of the circuit, it was going to perhaps touch off a bushfire in the area as well.
Well, it has actually, because the fuel run under the track in a drain, which is right near the car, and it set the ground alight for the bushfire in sort of the other side of the circuit.
So burning fuel was running through the drain, was it?
Running through the drain. It's sort of out on the outside of the circuit now. The car ended up on the inside, and the fuel's burning on the outside, so it's not very good at the moment, I think.
Well, fire, of course, is the greatest concern to any driver in any type of race car. What flashed through your mind when you climbed out and saw the whole car on fire?
To save Mr. Danaher's car.
Will it be okay for Bathurst?
I'm sure it will be. It's just a matter of replacing probably the rear end and fixing up a few panels at the back. It's completely warped out of shape, so we'll be back there.
You'll be running with whom at Bathurst, Charlie?
Well, as yet, that hasn't been announced. Probably in about a week or so it'll be announced who we're running.
Oh, I see. Playing it cagey.
I thought we might have sneaked out a rash statement from you in view of the state of shock you must be in.
No, I'm not that shocked yet.
Well, that was bad luck so early in the race. Charlie O'Brien,
Thanks, sir.
who went out with a fire, as he explained. At the moment, the first 8 places are all to the 8-cylinder cars, and this race, as Bathurst is used, being run in categories divided according to the number of cylinders rather than engine capacity. And the leading car in the 6-cylinder class, which also includes rotary engines, is car number 11. And car number 11 is Alan Grice in the BMW, who started from the tail of the grid and is now right up there fighting in the 3rd group of cars. We'll bring you the action from them in just a moment, because they're now coming up towards the start-finish line. You can see there the Phillips scoreboard, which is bringing you the first 10 places.
Dick Johnson, number 17, the race leader. 05, Peter Brock. Kevin Bartlett in the Channel 9 Camaro. Warren Cullen, of course, in the car that he'll co-drive with Alan Jones at Bathurst. Fred Geisler from Goulburn, running in 5th place in car number 24. The next one is car number 14.
That's Fred Geisler and Gary Rogers.
Then Murray Carter in car number 18. Right behind him, running in 8th place, the driver of car number 4.
It's Tony Edmondson, who apparently survived that crunch with Charlie O'Brien. He hit O'Brien and caused the damage that Charlie described, the fire. There's the car you can see now with the singed back ends, but most of the smoke apparently was from a bushfire rather than just the fire in the car, but it does look fairly badly damaged. It was hit enough to be put into a bank, and there's a lot of mud around it, as you can see. But Edmondson recovered well, and he's now running in 8th place.
Alan Grice has worked his way up through the pack too to make the top 10, so Grice is still making a charge towards the leaders. There's
Yes.
Dick Johnson, our race leader, car number 17 from Queensland.
And at 10th spot, at the other end of the leading group, Mike, is the rotary engine Mazda of Barry Jones. He is the 10th place runner, and he's running second in the class for 6-cylinder or rotary engine cars. The small class for 4-cylinder cars is being led by car number 51, which is the Chickadee Chicken, Salika of Graham Bailey.
Hello, we have Brian Callahan. Brian, of course, retired from Speedway some months ago, and not having the best of luck in the road racing sphere. So the races are a little longer on the road courses than they are on the Speedway.
He and Peter Mackay, the new editor of Modern Motor magazine, are sharing that car together. That's bad luck for the two of them to be out so early with troubles. They are aiming at Bathurst as their major run, so let's hope whatever the problem was today is minor, and it helps them in developing their car for Bathurst.
The race continues, doing it nicely out in front. This is the way he's driven to so many Touring Car Championship round successes. Good dice here with Murray Carter further back, and
he's
spun
gone.
it.
He's gone out on Brown there, just gave him a nudge there. Not too bad. Carter has gone off. There's only 4 seconds between the last 5 cars, and it's from 5th to 10th, or 6th to 10th. Murray Carter there will be doing a bit of cursing under his breath, or maybe because no one can hear him above his breath. That's Brian Callahan again. That's Callaghan. He hasn't quite bogged the cab. He's doing a fair job of rolling the sand where he's left. He's trying to get it going fairly obviously. He's working on it. He's applying one hand to the ignition switch and the other.
Yes, I think that's it at all. Scratch of the head. Been caught in the sand trap at the CRC. Okay, number 17, Dick Johnson. It's not that we're following the leader, it's just that our leader is running into traffic, and we're trying to read the race as Johnson would be reading it. You can see Johnny Smith just ahead of him in the Peter Williamson 777 car. Oh, he goes straight between the two of these slower cars. Manages to hold his gap over Peter Brock on the brakes a little earlier to try and conserve the brakes.
And John Smith, Mike, despite the fact that the car stayed in the pits for the equivalent of 2 laps, is running 3rd place in the class for, sorry, 4th place in the class for 4-cylinder cars. So they haven't lost as much ground as one might have expected.
We might go back into the pit area for another report from Gary Wilkinson.
Okay. 2 important things in this race as it continues are going to be fuel stops and tyre wear. Let's talk about tyre wear, Bobby Morris, and we can see plenty of it on this corner right behind us.
Well, you can probably see that some of the drivers here are different styles, and the guys who are holding their cars the straightest are leaving less rubber on the road and more on their tyres. And these are the fellows who are going to have tyres as they get towards their pit stop, and they'll still be able to maintain their pace. You notice Dick Johnson and particularly Peter Brock are driving very straight, trying to conserve their cars and particularly their tyres. Some of the lesser drivers or the slower cars who are not handling as well, they're sliding a little, they're leaving big strips of rubber on the road, and they're the ones who are going to have to stop for tyres.
Well, who aren't going to stop for tyres, if anybody?
Well, I think they'll all stop for tyres eventually, because everybody has to stop for fuel, but it means that they'll be able to go faster and longer.
Just one of the problems that the drivers face in this CRC 300. We'll be back at Amaroo Park after this.
Alan Grice finds himself at the present time in 7th place, but he at the moment is separating Dick Johnson and Peter Brock. They're coming up. Johnson has already taken him on the outside, and now it's Peter Brock who's trying to put a lap on Alan Grice at this stage, and Grice, I don't think, wants to give a placing away.
No, it's a very critical stage of the race. They've been going through the cars in the second half of the leaderboard, and there's been a very difficult job for both Johnson and Brock to get by them, and I can't imagine Alan Grice is going to make it easy for Peter Brock. He won't try and hold him up, but he's not going to surrender any line or lose time, because he's involved in a pretty desperate battle himself with other cars there. He made up a lot of ground from the last position on the grid, but if Brocky gets by, he's going to have to win it the hard way, and here he goes. He's got a bit of squirt up the hill, and that's the easiest part as far as Brock is concerned. Grice will go very deep under brakes if he can, and he braked a little later, but still the Commodore went a little deeper, and so he's got by him.
35 laps, I think, completed of 1:55. 35 completed, so it's still a long way to go in the CRC 300. There's Barry Jones just tucked in behind Alan Grice in the RX-7. He's been running fairly consistently all day.
We've had Tony Edmondson spin in the Recar Commodore, Alan Brown's car. He's had a fairly fraught sort of meeting here, Tony, for his introduction to touring car races. He is the national champion as far as sports sedan's concerned. But on the third lap, he ran into the back of the Commodore of Charlie O'Brien, as Charlie told you, quite by accident when Charlie's throttle snapped and he slowed suddenly. And we also saw him run into the side of a straying Falcon driven by the Victorian veteran Murray Carter. So Tony, rather, with 2 biffs and 1 spin, has had a fairly interesting first 33 laps.
Peter Brock, now that he's managed to pass Alan Grice again in number 11, is back on the tail, or certainly in sight of the race leader, Dick Johnson.
A real battle going on here, Mike, between the BMW and the Mazda Rotary. Alan Grice versus Barry Jones. Grice got by Jones, having come from the tail of the grid. But Jones is coming again and doesn't like to give ground. You'll see them coming in now, and he's made up ground again with his peripheral ported engine, which means just that he's changed the porting arrangement on these rotary engines in a way that has added quite a bit of power to the motor. He estimates, in fact, that he's now developing. I'll go on with that later on. In the meantime, I believe that Gary Wilkinson has some information for us in the pit, so we'll go down to Gary.
Well, we've just seen a few minutes ago the Recar Commodore with Tony Edmondson, very quick in and out of the pits. Pit manager Les Moore, what's the problem?
We've got a slight problem with water temperature at the moment. It's fluctuating a fair bit. So basically what we're going to do now is cut down on the down changes, just bring her into the corner on the brakes instead of the gearbox and try and stabilise the water temperature.
All costs time though, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right, but it's a matter of finishing the race or doing an engine, you know.
I noticed a little bit of damage at the front too. Do you know what caused that?
I think it was up the top in the first couple of laps when they were in there behind the Mazda and that, and had a bit of a fight to get through, I think.
Okay, Les, thanks a lot. Well, Tony Edmondson's got a few problems. We'll have to keep an eye on him as well, Mike.
Thank you very much, Gary, and here's Alan Grice. Still trying to run solidly as he can. 7th place at this stage, held by Grice and first in his class. Dick Johnson, of course, is still our race leader. There's Barry Jones, so that good dice continues between Alan Grice and Barry Jones. There's Muir going through, being overlapped this time by Dick Johnson. We asked Johnson prior to the race starting his strategy and what he thought and some of the rewards for touring car racing today. Sitting on pole position today, what tactics do you take into the race? Do you conserve and try and finish out the 300 kilometres, or deal with an obvious problem of a Commodore challenge from the outset?
Well, that depends, Mike, on what sort of start we get. Naturally, I'd like to get to the lead first and see if I can get a little bit of a buffer. But I feel that this race will be run like the touring car rounds. It'll be flat chat the whole way. And that's the way we're going to approach the race. I know the car can do it, the tyres can do it, everything can do it. It just leaves me. So I sincerely hope that I can do it too.
The financial reward for today's race, it is inducive to make a driver want to come here and run and skip maybe 1 or 2 of the 300 or 400 kilometre races that don't pay as much money.
Well, for a 300 kilometre race to pay $600 is an insult to anyone's intelligence, I believe. And this is one of the reasons why I haven't been going to some of the manufacturers' rounds or the endurance rounds. But this one here today, which has a good prize, I think is worthwhile running it.
Do you think prize money generally for the touring car championship races, and you should know, you've driven them all this year, are substantial or perhaps an insult?
Well, it gets down to the fact of being a businessman, and when you've got a business that makes X amount of dollars and spends X plus $45, it doesn't really make sense that something that costs $20,000 to do when you have a return of $10,000. Like, I'm sure that there's not many businesses run under that sort of conditions, but you know, I think the prize money should be up a little bit for sure.
Is the Touring Car Championship Series too long? Should it be shortened, perhaps?
There's a lot of miles to cover. We've done something like 50,000 kilometres in a matter of 4.5, 5 months. And the cost of travelling and things like this is very expensive, so I think they should shorten it down to not so many races and keep them mainly on the East Coast.
All right, best luck for the 300 kilometre journey.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, Dick Johnson, the but words from the man who has, of course, rewarded all the Australians who gave so generously to the impromptu telethon that followed the Hardy Ferodo last year, and looking straight down the gun barrel at a possible victory in the James Hardy this year is Dick Johnson, and we'll capture Johnson and all of the other stars when we return to Amaroo Park in just a few moments.
Well, Colin Bond has been in the pits very quickly for tyre change.
Problem with the tyre, I believe, and this won't be an unscheduled stop because they've done enough distance, they've filled it with fuel, they can go right through to the end. He's got fresh tyres on, he'll have to be very careful of them, but he will get through the end without another stop.
Okay, Mike, all yours.
Okay, thank you, Gary Wilkinson, coming out of our commercial break there to see the pit work on Colin Bond's car. And Bond, of course, has now rejoined the race, driving for the Masterton Homes team. We also have another one at the moment that could well be Murray Carter. Carter, you might remember, had a coming together before with Tony Edmondson. I think that might reflect the impromptu white wall treatment of the Dunlops on the rear.
I think it could. In fact, when Gary was asking Tony Edmondson to pit why the front of their car had been shoveled in, he didn't know, but I think part of the reason is they're in the pits in their eyes. Of course, that happened out of their sight at the top of the circuit, one of two cars that Tony had the misfortune to hit, neither his own fault. And the Murray Carter one very deftly collected by Murray when he was forced wide and got the car back into good shape, and off he went with no more damage apparently than taking the paint off the Commodore that got so close to him on the inside. While we're watching him in the pits there, I might just run through the leaders as they are at the end of 41 laps. It's still Dick Johnson leading from Peter Brock, and the gap there is very, very short, as you can see. And in fact, the consistency of Dick Johnson and Brock is quite amazing, but Johnson's been lapping at around times of 46 seconds, 46.4, 46.8. His practice time yesterday was 44, so he can go faster, but he's been very, very evenly timed, 56 rather, very evenly spacing himself around the circuit, and he still has 2 seconds in terms of sprint ability up his sleeve, so he's doing it pretty easily. They have a long gap down to the third place man, car number 9, which is Kevin Bartlett. Colin Bond's car, by the way, which has gone back on the track, is smoking quite badly. You saw the tyres being changed. There's a lot of oil pouring from the back of the car. In fourth place after Kevin Bartlett is car number 12, and that's Warren Cullen in the Commodore, a car similar to the one that he'll share with Alan Jones. He's building a new Commodore for the James Hardy 1000 on October the 4th. In fifth place is car number 24, which is Bob Muir in the Falcon he'll share with Pete Gagan a little later in the race. And car number 11 is next, which is Alan Grice's BMW. A good effort by the BMW driver to get up into sixth place, considering he started from 25th and final place on the grid. Those are the leading 6 cars at 41 laps.
Okay, still race leader, of course, Dick Johnson of Queensland, number 17. Peter Brock, though, is not that far behind him, and in fact is starting to pull him back just a little bit. We'll go back to the pits and to Gary Wilkinson.
Murray Carter in the pits. Murray, tyre change. Any other problems?
Just that we seem to be getting very slippery, and the front tyre had worn out. But we're looking to see whether we've got any other problem. We might make a shocker adjustment at this stage because of the circuit becoming so slippery.
Front runners are going a bit quick out there.
They're going exceptionally quick. Demoralising, isn't it?
Best of luck. Murray Carter in the pits. Quick tyre change, quick check, and he'll be back on the track.
Thank you, Gary. One of the motorsports characters is indeed Murray Carter, who sums it up embarrassingly quick. Okay, there's Barry Jones in the Darrell Lee RX-7 peripheral ported version. Number 41, still running strongly in the pack here today.
I was talking about what he'd done to the car, because he's something of a pioneer in the area of peripheral ported engines. He can even say it, let alone work on it. But he reckons now that this new Mazda rotary engine, which is running in the category for 6-cylinder or rotary engine cars, his of course being a rotary, is now developing about 250 brake horsepower, which is about 30 more than he was getting before at the wheels. In other words, the effective power being put through the tyres is about 30 horsepower more than he had before, and that's a very substantial advantage. Alan Moffat is rumoured to be preparing one of these cars for Bathurst. His activities are still a little shrouded in mystery, but hopefully we're going to see Alan in action at the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst. He's been one of the great drivers at Mount Panorama, and we hope we'll see him in a peripheral ported rotary like the car that is being run by Barry Jones. The great strength of these cars in the minds of those who run them is their sheer reliability, and they reckon they'll be front runners at Bathurst because they can keep on going, not hard on tyres. They've got a good reputation, the factory cars in big events in America, Daytona, a 24-hour race and so on, where they do well. So they've got the pedigree for long distance events. And this is Barry Jones.
And also the comment that we made earlier about Colin Bond smoking, let me tell you that is absolutely true, and it's getting worse. We'll pick up on Bond shortly. As you can see, Barry Jones starting to make overtures now at Brian Muir. And of course, he's not that far behind the tailpipe on Alan Grice's JPS number 11.
Some of the class cars catching up pretty well too, Mike. We have the BMW of Alan Grice, which is leading the six-cylinder class in 6th place, and in 7th place, car number 41, which is Jones, running some rotary there, and we skip one place as 8th is held by car number 14, which is Freddie Geisler, who's running with Gary Rogers, the Commodore. But 9th is car 32, which is Steve Masterton, and 10th is car number 42, which is Terry Daly in the Capri. So some of the smaller cars getting up there. The leader of the 4-cylinder class is car number 51, which is still the Chickadee Chicken Graham Bailey Salika from Gosford. Second in the class is car number 55. He's a fair way back at the moment. That's mean, as we see Bond back in the pits again.
Yes, back to Gary Wilkinson, who is in the pits and on the job.
Well, Colin Bond, back so soon.
It looks that way, yes. We've got a mysterious smoke coming into the car, and it's either got to be the gearbox or the differential. Everything's working okay, but I know the car's not going to do another 100 laps, you know, without a amount of smoke coming out of it. You know, it's obviously got to run out of oil somewhere. So we'll just have a look now and see if we can fix it and put a bit more oil in and go out again.
Okay, so you're back on the track. Colin Bond with an oil leak problem, and it could be very debilitating for him. This was his second pit stop, and it's going to cost him valuable time. You can see the pit crew working frantically there. Colin, unflappable as ever, sitting back, taking the opportunity to get a bit of a respite and get a bit of a drink. He needs a straw because he can't drink out of the can with his helmet on. But as soon as they get this sorted out, we'll see Colin Bond hopefully back on the track. Back to Mike Raymond.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, Gary Wilkinson. Dick Johnson, number 17 of Queensland, is still our race leader in the CRC Chemicals Enduro, but getting closer to him, let me tell you, is Peter Brock in the Marlborough Holden Team Commodore. And in fact, as you notice Johnson come through this corner, peekaboo, right behind him, just sitting there waiting for something to go wrong, is Peter Brock, playing a waiting game. Obviously, this race could be won in the pits today on their one and only pit stop. But after a lot of problems of being slowed up by some of the slower cars, some that turned right when they should have gone left, Peter Brock is back on the trail and sitting not too far off the rear bumper of Dick Johnson. Kevin Bartlett is still running third in the Channel 9 Camaro, and they were just clear of Warren Cullen of Victoria, placed in fourth. Fred Geisler of Goulburn is placed fifth. And in 6th place, and also his class leader, is Alan Grice in the John Player BMW. In fact, I think in the last lap of the race, Grice, in fact, has moved to 5th. Moving up towards the 50th lap in this 1:55 circuit enduro at Amaroo Park. So almost a third of the way completed. Dick Johnson and ever-present Peter Brock. We'll take a break and return with more exciting motor racing action live from Amaroo Park and the CRC Chemicals 300. Welcome back to the CRC Chemicals 300 from the Equal Opportunity Channel, Channel 7, as we see Kevin Bartlett running in 3rd place. But right behind Bartlett is Dick Johnson. So Johnson, in fact, is starting to make a move now that will see him overlap and put a lap on the 3rd place driver in the field. Bartlett's big Camaro running for the first time in a CRC race with the disc brakes all round. Last year he had a handful and a half with this car, trying to get it around the circuit, but I'd say at this stage, Bartlett's still running into a problem with brakes. He's let Johnson go straight around the outside and will keep to the outside to enable Peter Brock, I would think, to get through the turn. So Brock still tagging the back of Dick Johnson in car number 17. Bartlett separating them, but still running 3rd overall in the race. And Warren Cullen of Victoria is in 4th place. So the order is still unchanged with Johnson. Held up momentarily was Peter Brock, but there you can see Brock going through. There's Bartlett still running 3rd in the race. So 1, 2, 3, and Cullen is in 4th. Okay, the leader, Dick Johnson, and Peter Brock, a couple of cars behind him as they come down into Winfield Corner. That tight right-hander. Bartlett's car is getting very skatey, so it first signals the fact that maybe he's feeling the pressure with tyres. I don't think he'd want to be in after about 55 laps. He's caught in amongst the slower cars, but the big Amaroo manages to get through that gap. We'll go trackside now to the pit area and to Evan Green for this report.
In the pits with John Harvey, it seems that Peter Brock has made a little bit of ground up, but he's still running behind the leader. Is he in control of the race or having a hard time, John Harvey?
Oh, I'd say he's absolutely in control of the race so far. We're quite happy with this position. They've virtually left the whole field now. We believe we can possibly do a quicker pit stop than Dick Johnson, which will put us in front. And then just a matter of maintaining the gap to the end. Undoubtedly, the road will be slippery and what have you in the remaining laps at the end of the race, but we don't see any problem at this point.
So we won't expect to see Peter Brock try and pass, and he'll wait till the pit stops.
Well, he may try to pass in the event that Dickie's tyres start to go off or something like that, but I think he's quite happy at the moment to sit where he is. We're quite sure we can do a faster pit stop, or we're hopeful we can anyway, which will put us in front of Dick.
But Peter has no problem?
None at all.
Right. Well, Bob Morris, there have been a few people in trouble here. Why did Tony Edmondson come in the pits?
He had a flat tyre. He put it on, he went out again. Colin Bond is out on the circuit again after having 2 pit stops. He has a leaking gearbox, and the way it's smoking at the moment, I can't see him continuing for much longer. He'll either run out of oil or it'll be black flag, which is a great pity for Colin.
Right. Back to you, Mike Raymond.
Okay, thank you, Evan. And there's Bond's Old Smoky coming on the outside as they head up Bitchapave Hill, laying a cloud of it, let me tell you, as he roams going up to the Marlborough Crest at the top of the hill and dipping down into the Dunlop Loop. So it doesn't look like there's going to be a class win for Colin Bond. We have 100 laps
to go. Oh. You've got to be kidding me. I'm out of breath already. And Colin Bond is just about out of oil, I'd say.
Yes, bad luck indeed for Colin, in with 2 pit stops, and I'd say the drivers following close behind him would be anything but happy. They would be expecting the black flag out for Colin Bond rather than lay an oil slick right around the track. As you can see, coming out of the rear end of the car, he is dropping oil over the track. It'll be easy to guess this, what the result of it will be as we follow the cars around the turn behind Colin, if they're a little skatey or a little sideways. But I don't think it'll be too long before Colin Bond of the Masterton Homes Capri V6 gets the black flag and asks to call to the pit area. Dick Johnson, still race leader. Peter Brock, still 15 metres away from his bumper in 0.5. Kevin Bartlett is 3rd, and 4th is Warren Cullen of Victoria. 5th is Alan Grice in the John Player BMW. 6th place held by the driver of car number 41. And that, of course, is Barry Jones in the Darrell Lee Chocolates RX-7, peripheral-ported Mazda. And right behind him, Fred Geisler in number 24. There's Alan Grice, also a little skatey, getting out of the corner. Not so much the car maybe, but perhaps attributable to the oil that's been dropped on the circuit. Some of it, of course, from Colin Bond.
Only the top 3 cars on the same lap now, is it?
Well, we've had Kevin Bartlett already overtaken by both Dick Johnson and, of course, by Peter Brock in 0.5. John Harvey, as we've heard, believes that the Marlborough Holden dealer team can win the race with a better pit stop than Dick Johnson. Perhaps Evan Green might be able to get a comment from Johnson's pits, but at the moment it would appear that Kevin Bartlett is slowing appreciably as they come down the back part of the course. In fact, I think would have probably dropped his 3rd place. It would also appear that Tony Edmondson is in strife with car number 4. In fact, going to the...
pulling to the infield.
To the infield.
Yes, the Recar Commodore, number 4, is off on the infield with Tony Edmondson at the wheel, and is out of business, kaput for the race.
OK, we'll go to Evan Green as I think Kevin Bartlett prepares to come in for a pit stop.
John French is a man who'll co-drive with Dick Johnson, maybe here today, certainly at Bathurst. John, how is Dick going out there?
Oh, I think he's going pretty well. He's running to the plan that he actually was going to attempt. He's going to run round in front of Brocky and doing the laps of about 56, 57. We plan to come in at about a bit over halfway for a couple of tyres and some petrol. If if everything goes to plan, that's what it'll do.
Well, despite the traffic, he's lapping exactly within the time you mentioned, between 56 and 57 seconds. So he seems to be pretty well in control.
Yes, well, yeah, 56 or 57 is pretty easy to do. It's when you can do a 54 in a qualifier. 56 and 57s are 2 seconds off the pace, and even Bobby Morris could do that.
He was terribly tired at the end of the race last year. Are you worried about the possibility of physical exhaustion?
Oh, I don't think so. He's probably is doing it a lot easier this year after his full year of racing, whereas last year he only had a couple of races before this event. I'm going to... I don't expect to have a drive, but if Dick's tired or sick or something or other like that, well, I'll get in later on.
Right. Bobby Morris, he's doing it a hard way, Dick Johnson, in the sense that he has to do all the shoveling of the traffic.
Well, he certainly has. He's in front. He's got to make sure that the slower cars see him, so he can't take any chances in the traffic. I think personally they're playing a bit of a tag match, a wait and see, and with this, the pit stop is going to be the most critical thing in the whole race. And whoever gets out first after the pit stop will be sprinting to try and make a break on the other. So the pit stop is going to be the critical thing.
Back to you again, Mike Raymond.
Critical? You're not kidding. Look at this.
Yes, we have a good race going here between Dick Johnson, who has eased the pace off just a little bit, and he's got Brocky right on his tailpipe, moving on, coming down the back part of the course. And I think Brock has warmed to the idea of going out in front and leading this race for a while. I don't know whether Johnson's planning on a pit stop or has just eased the pace off just a little bit to find out where Brocky is, but he certainly knows where he is. He's right on his tail now. Here are the two of them, and this race starting to come alive now, and the big crowd present at Amaroo Park starting to rise as they sense a Ford versus Holden thrill match all the way down to the checkered flag. Oh, Johnson on the brakes that time. I don't know if he has any problems at all with braking, but Brock has got right to him in the last 2 laps of this race. Dick Johnson, race leader. Peter Brock placed second. And one heck of a dice. I don't know whether Brock is running that well. In second place, he's thought he would move up and really put the pressure squarely on the shoulders of Dick Johnson.
A pair of them have just passed that little yellow Corolla driven by Alexandra Surplus, and I saw her about 2 hours before the start of the race. She was shaking then.
Well, we saw Alexandra a little earlier with a little indiscretion that saw Peter Brock out in the rocks for about 30 seconds. Anyway, the gap is still very, very close, less than half a car length when we get down to the real braking area. There's nothing between these two. When it comes to horsepower on the front straightaway, Dick Johnson can manage to pull away a little, but Johnson's best time, I think, in the last couple of laps is mid-57s, 57.5, 58. And here we go with Peter Brock warming to the job of an inside pass here, but thinks better as he ducks in behind Dick Johnson, coming onto the straightaway, and Brock now signalling he wants to come from behind and take the lead in the CRC. Doing it easily. Johnson appears to have more power up the hill, but in the back part of the course where there's a lot more braking required, it's Peter Brock who can close up virtually at will.
I wonder if there's any sort of message for Dick Johnson in the fact that Murray Carter had to change tyres so early.
Well, we've had some unexpected tyre changes very early in this race. I wouldn't think that Brock, or Johnson rather, would want to go into the pits unless he and Brock were about to go in at the same time, unless he was set. But I wouldn't imagine he was planning on coming in before perhaps another 10 laps.
Johnson leads Brock on his tailpipe, and Brock showing signs in the last couple of laps that he'd maybe like to get ahead of Dick Johnson and open up a slight lead of his own before he makes that decision to come in and pit. And
oh, yes, Johnson's in trouble. He spun it, and he's going to take Brock.
Oh, no, he doesn't. Oh, goodness gracious me, Dick Johnson's ended up facing the wrong way. He's given away the race lead to Peter Brock. Almost took Brock out, as Mike Raymond said. A close thing.
Almost a reenactment of last year's CRC Chemicals race where Johnson was leading. His tyres went down to the canvas and a spin, and that put Brock in front. Johnson rejoins the race, and we'll have more motor racing action live when we return to Amaroo Park.
We're in the pits at Amaroo Park, and that strange view is the underside of Colin Blanche Capri on a jack and back in the pits. Colin, do you know what the trouble is yet?
No, I don't think so, Evan, but it appears to be a bit of oil coming from the gearbox, we suspect. Everything's working fine at this stage of the game, but I know that the amount of smoke that it's creating, it's not going to last, the other 100, laps that it's got to have to do. So we just come in to see if we can actually fix it. But I think now, the amount of time we've been in here, it's sort of, if not much chance in going out.
Well, this might be a particularly busy area in a while, because the word is that Steve Marston in the twin car has got something trailing from the back of the vehicle and may be coming in the pits. And as you may know, out on the track, we've had Dick Johnson spin, and his pit is preparing for him to come in for a tyre change. It may not happen, but they are ready. So we'll be waiting as well. In the meantime, it's back to you, Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Evan. That report direct from the pit area. There's Warren Cullen of Victoria, currently placed third in the race. Now this, of course, is the Commodore, sponsored by Settlement Road Wreckers of Victoria, that Alan Jones, Australia's world champion Formula One driver, is to come to the James Hardy and co-drive with Cullen on Sunday, October the 4th. And a handful of opposite lock goes to Cullen, and back in the fray again, trying to unwind himself from about 10th place in the race after some problems, is Kevin Bartlett.
Cullen is about 1 lap and 30 seconds behind the race leader, Peter Brock. He's in third place. He'll be leaving, he was telling me, end of the month, about another fortnight, to go and spend a week with Alan Jones to discuss Bathurst and tactics of the car and all those attendant arrangements.
Well, it'll be great to see Alan Jones, Australia's Formula One world champion. The driver has had a wretched run this year and probably deserves to have won at least another 3 Grand Prix races. But on our Phillips scoreboard, as you can see at the top of the screen, Peter Brock in 05, currently the leader. Second place held by Dick Johnson, number 17.
11.3 seconds is the distance between the pair.
Okay, and number 12, Warren Cullen on camera at the moment, running in third place. Fourth, believe it or not, is Alan Grice in car number 11 that started at the rear of the grid. So Grice is back up through the field, and of course in 41, our next place driver in 5th place is Barry Jones in the Darrell Lee Chocolates RX-7 peripheral ported Mazda. Just in back of him, Fred Geisler in number 14 from Goulburn.
Interesting thing about Barry Jones in that peripheral ported Mazda is that he started third on the grid, got shuffled back to about 10th spot, but as the wear and tear is told on the bigger cars, he's just edging right back up there again.
Yes, it only needs something to go wrong with either our race leader or with Dick Johnson, and make no mistake, Warren Cullen's going to be there, and also to Alan Grice. Here's Murray Carter, moves aside, allows Dick Johnson, presently placed second in the CRC race behind Peter Brock for the Marlborough Holden dealer team in the Commodore V8. There's Alan Grice, car number 11, the John Player BMW, currently placed 4th and 1st in his class. Grice, a remarkable drive from the back of the field, as Frank Gardner said at the head of our telecast today. They had all sorts of problems yesterday. No time attributed to Grice in the qualifying run, so he had to do it right from behind. But he's been making steady progress, and right behind him, of course, is Barry Jones in the peripheral ported Mazda, the Darrell Lee Chocolates entry, number 41.
Those threatening clouds that we saw just prior to the start of the telecast have cleared to a brilliant afternoon here at Amaroo Park on the outskirts of Sydney. And boy, we've had a tremendous race, particularly at the head of the field between Johnson and Brock. And then on lap 61, we saw the pressure tell, partly pressure, and I guess obviously the tyre wear, which we've been speculating about, because Dick Johnson's times had slowed from about 56 a lap to 58 seconds a lap, an indication that his tyres were going off a little. That plus the pressure with Brock right up his tailpipe we saw in the straight. Dick Johnson spin out, great piece of driving by Peter Brock to slip on the inside of him. It looked for a while as if Johnson would take Brock out with him, but no. The former Australian Touring Car champ slipped through, takes the race lead, and is now about 12 seconds ahead of the True Blue Falcon of Dick Johnson.
The CRC race, of course, the curtain raiser to the James Hardy 1000, and this year the classes for Bathurst will be divided into 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder and 8-cylinder, so you, the viewers at home, can follow the action a little easier. Today, of course, in the open category, 8 cylinders, Peter Brock is our race leader, currently placed 4th, but first in the 6-cylinder class is, of course, Alan Grice in the BMW for John Player, and first in his class in the 4 cylinders and 9th overall is Graham Bailey in the Chickadee Celica. There's the Gates Craft V6 Capri. Here's our race leader, Peter Brock from Melbourne. In the 05 Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodore, Mr. Professional. And he needs one thing to go wrong with the race leader, as we had said earlier in the day, to sitting off Dick Johnson. And it became time to put a little more pressure on him when Johnson had his problem, whatever it might be. I can't believe it was tyres entirely, because at that stage, Johnson would have certainly gone to the pit and not risked another spin. But Mr. Cool, Peter Brock, dipped the Australian Touring Car Championship to Dick Johnson on the National Trail this year, and he'll be going back to the James Hardy at Bathurst on Sunday, October the 4th, with his co-driver, Jim Richards, to try and wrestle another crown away from all the challengers.
This car, in fact, is John Harvey's car. Peter Brock's Bathurst car is here at the circuit, but he's not running it, obviously, in the race today. The car that he's going to drive at Bathurst with Jim Richards is at the circuit, and you should see it. It is a showpiece. A mean-looking race machine as well. Peter Brock will guarantee that. It's 25 pounds lighter than this car, and develops, he says, a touch more power.
There's Gary Wilmington going through in the number 8 car. Here's our second place driver, Dick Johnson of Queensland. In number 17, who we believe is just about ready to come into the pits. Evan Green is down in the pit area. We'll follow in this last half lap and see whether in fact Johnson does beat Brock into the pit area. Johnson coming down the back part of the course, heading down to the right-hander that is Winfield turn. Here he comes into the corner now. If he goes to the outside and stays on the... Yes, he is. He's coming in for what should be a very, very critical pit stop in the CRC 300. Evan Green in the pits. Johnson now coming to the crew. We'll wait and see exactly how quick his stop is. Very tight pit area here at Amaroo Park, not like the wide open spaces of Mount Panorama. Crew very, very quickly onto the job, jacking up the side of the car, going for the new tyres. We'll go now to Evan Green.
This could be the critical stop of the race. Already he's been in the pits for 16 seconds. His co-driver, John French, is examining the 2 tyres on this side of the car while the others are being changed. And Dick Johnson sitting in the car quietly at the moment. Car okay, Dick?
Yeah, good, except for tyres. Pretty hard race, actually. It's going a bit quicker than what we anticipated.
You look very hot. Must be hard physically.
Oh, it's hot, but I'm okay. I'm fine.
I'll get out of his way. He's about to start the motor. 2 tyres changed on the outside. He's been in now for 44 seconds. That's a long stop. No, the other side going up. This is not as good as they wanted. He's had John French looking. He said, yes, you better change all the tyres, man. And they're doing this as well. Certainly the backside tyre here. 5 nut range. That's John French in the red jacket helping out with the tyre handler. Each man has a specific role to do here. Get the thread set up. So easy to make a mistake. Those nuts are so hot. His fingers will be burnt after this job, but he's putting them on quickly. He's got both speed to bear in mind and consistency. He must make sure they're tightened and put in place properly. He's got 4 on. The stop almost over. On goes the hydraulic drive. 1 done up. 2. Johnson has his seatbelt done. The jack man is waiting. Down goes the car. 1 more to go. The car is right. Johnson's away. He's been in the pits for 1 minute and 32 seconds. We'll return to the action here at Amaroo Park when we return to live motor racing in the CRC 300. And in the pits, the CRC 300, John Smith is bringing the Peter Williamson Toyota in. It's going to be a crowded pit because right alongside is Alan Grice's pit, and he too is expected in. Under goes the quick lift jack. The front wheels are being checked and changed, and John Smith tearing out his special seat. Being a smaller man than Peter Williamson, he had a layer on top of the seat. He hauled it out. Now he's helping Peter Williamson do up his straps. He's harnessing him in place. John Smith, who's much smaller than Peter Williamson, strapping up the driver while the mechanics change tyres.
77.
Working on both sides. It looks like a 4-tyre change. Adding fuel from the churn at the back. What do you like out there? What do you like out there, John?
Getting very slippery, Evan. The car's going extremely well. Although it's missing out a little bit of horsepower compared to the Mazdas and things like that, but it seems to be going pretty well. All it needs is another 8 valves in there somewhere.
That unscheduled stop must have disappointed you.
Yeah, someone flicked the hose up, the water hose over in front of me.
Oh, where the fire was?
That's right, it hit the car right in the middle of the grill. So I didn't even know when it was coming or not.
Well, bad luck for Colin Bond, whose car's been pushed out. He's had gearbox seal trouble, apparently, and a lot of oil going from there. We've just been speaking to John Smith, who looked hot, and my word, you've got pretty wet hair there.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with the way the car was running, Evan. It's a fair bit of hard work on this surface at the moment. It's very, very slippery, particularly around Honda and around the loop, but I don't know, the car is going like a rocket, actually. It's very good. It's a pity about the first stop, as I said, but that's showbiz.
Peter Williamson will stay in the car for the rest of the race.
Yes, we'll go out there and go right through now. I was very happy with the way it went. I'm not too sure how many laps I ended up doing, but I think it was enough.
Right. Well, just a few minutes ago, as you know, we had Dick Johnson come in and make a pit stop, which went more than 1.5 minutes. Now, Bob Morris, you reckon that the team made a tactical mistake?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's so hard to make these decisions, split-second decisions, but they had planned to change 2 outside tyres, and when they checked the inside tyre, it was worn a lot worse than they thought, so they then had to do that. And then, in effect, they did a double pit stop.
So it added maybe, what, 30 seconds at that time there?
I would say it added about 40 seconds, and it's put Dick 2 laps behind, by my calculation.
Now, is that the sort of mistake that you'd expect the Marlborough Holden dealer team to make?
Well, I think that the Marlborough Holden dealer team have the advantage because when they come into the pits, they'll be able to do a leisurely stop, knowing what Dick has done, and I'm sure they'll get in and out in under a minute and have that distance up their sleeve.
By the way, while we're here, if you've been wondering why so many cars have been having tyre troubles, let me show you. Just come with me. Look down here on the road. All these little black pieces, they're scattered right down the track as far as you can see. Bob Morris, you might explain just what they are, and they might let people know why people are having tyre problems.
Well, these are pieces of rubber, and when the tyre becomes overheated, it actually peels off, and the abrasive nature of the circuit is actually ripping the tyres off. In the second half of the race, with a layer of rubber on the circuit, the tyre wear won't be so high. So teams that stop before halfway can then expect to get right through to the end on one set of tyres.
Because of this rubber which is being laid in a nice smooth layer on the track here at Amaroo Park, right?
That's correct.
Right, back to you then, Mike Raymond.
Okay, thanks very much, Evan, and just whizzing past as we pick up the race is our race leader. Quite obviously, Peter Brock and the Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodore 05 with that very comfortable buffer now over the second place driver. And here he is. It's Warren Cullen of Victoria.
But is he under threat, or is he?
Is he under threat? He has Barry Jones in the RX-7 Mazda right behind him. Jones has been stalking Cullen for about the last 5 or 6 laps of this race. Halfway down the back straightaway, we have Alan Grice in. Evan Green is in the pits, as Alan Grice has made a big charge up into 4th place in the race by our calculations at the moment, and through the Phillips scoreboard, scoring here at Amaroo Park today. In the pits, Alan Grice appears to be a routine stop for fuel, and take it away, Evan Green.
A fuel change going in and a check of 2 tyres. At the back of the car, some overflow fuel coming out from Alan Grice's JPS BMW, just indicating a bit of splash around the dry brake filler system. You can see now the second churn going in. One of the other assistants dressed in his flame-proof material, just damping up the excess to make sure there's no spillage because of the danger factor. The 2 inner wheels, those on the right-hand side of the car, not going to be changed. You can see, in fact, on the back right-hand tyre at the top, how there's an accumulation of rubber, the excess rubber that has been rolled up there. We were showing you on the track. There's some of it right on the top of the slick on Alan Grice's BMW. This is a car developed for long-distance racing with Bathurst as his primary aim, and today is a big mission for it. He's running in 4th place, and I think Alan Grice, sitting in this left-hand drive car, will be pretty happy with that sort of result. Fueling finishes, and the car is stalled, but he's got it going again. Spitting chips of rubber out, and Alan Grice takes the big 635 CSI BMW out back into the race. And over once more to you, Mike Raymond.
Okay, thanks very much, Evan. We pick up on Dick Johnson coming back through the field. Fresh rubber. He's already taken Brock now from behind. Brock at one stage was seen to be pulling away, but with fresh rubber aboard, Johnson's been able to be obviously run a lot faster. And I would think Brock at this stage would be working away at a pit stop within the next 2 or 3 laps. He knows that Dick Johnson has been in, probably is unaware of the slow stop that he made, but Johnson is going to go all out this time.
Brock and Harvey aiming for a 120 lap pit stop. So how many laps left? Where are we? It's 1 tenth to lose count. 83 laps. Well, I'll be surprised if they make it to 120 laps before they have a pit stop.
I think the calculations are a little out today strictly because of tyre wear. I don't think they were facing the same tyre wear as they had here last year. Okay, coming down to Winfield Corner, our director Peter Moss is on the spot as Barry Jones and Cullen get together down in the bottom corner, and here's Peter Brock.
Right behind them.
Right behind them, just in front of Brock, and about to come onto the front straight away, is Barry Jones, who has been stalking Warren Cullen, and in fact has overtaken Cullen. Cullen, I think, has gone to the pits, Yes, here he comes in now. Evan Green is on the spot, and as you can see, just the congestion of the pit area there.
This is where it's happening, and there's Brock in behind him too.
So we have absolute congestion in the pit area. The race leader, whistles blowing as Brock wants to get around the outside because Cullen has pulled in just in front of him and I think has overshot the pit area. Yes, he has. So Peter Brock is now forced to back up. John Harvey is at the ready, the co-driver. Brock will climb from the car as quickly as he can. Evan Green is in the pits and will cover the action for us.
And that was an awkward change for Peter Brock. As he came in, he had to dodge the Cullen car, which was parked right in front, and had to swing wide when at the last minute he saw the jack lying on the road. He missed it, which was what he had to do. They're changing the tyres all around
to move.
But that was a very chaotic start to the run, tyres lying there. The problem at this stage, Bob Morris, is that panic could set in, couldn't it?
Well, it was a panic because they had Warren Cullen in the pit right beside them, and it just ruined their run-up to their pit stop. And they had air jacks all over the ground, and Brock did a very good job backing into it, and I think they'll get away with a very good pit stop.
I'll go over and see if I can speak to Peter Brock. Not a good time to talk to you, Peter. I'll see you when you're clear. But Brock is just checking. You can see the smoke coming from the brakes to the front, which are hot. He must be careful. John Harvey has taken over. He must be careful not to leave his foot on the brake and have the pads pressed against the hot discs, or he'll cook them. One thing he has to remember is keep them off, which he does. There are cars flying up the pits. We've got a tyre there. It's pretty chaotic here at the head of the pits at the moment, while the race leader is in the pits. How's the time going, Bob Morris?
It's a minute 20. They've had a foul up on the left rear wheel. The car is in very close to the fence because the way Peter Brock had to back it in. They've got a problem, and it's now a minute 30. This could be a saviour for Dick Johnson. Harvey is very nervous at the wheel. I think the pressure is going to be right back on the Marlborough Holden dealer team, and we'll see what John Harvey can really do. The minute 45. It's slower than Dick Johnson now.
Well, we'll be talking to Peter Brock when we return to the action here at Amaroo Park in the CRC 300.
Minute 50.
Jones.
And it was a livid Peter Brock that got out of the car at that stop, which took 1 minute 50 seconds. That was slower than 64 you timed.
64 seconds, I think, yeah. What dictate 90 something, according to our clock, so that's all right. Very interesting race. The tyres had it, that's why I came in. It still had plenty of petrol left in it. So I struggled around for about 15 laps. I forgot my Dick, trying to sort of get a bit, but it was obvious that once he fitted new tyres on that he could gain those 2 seconds a lap. So I figured I'd give John about 25 laps break, I suppose. Another 25 laps less to do the Dick on those tyres, and you know, that should make a bit of a difference, I think.
How do you think Dick Johnson will stand up to the closing stages of this race? Because it is grueling physically.
A lot of oil in the track there, and if you come in a little bit hot, very easy to run wide and just sort of fall off the road and lose a few tenths. I mentioned to John, there's a lot of oil in the exit of Honda. I noticed the flag marshals haven't done anything about it, but I can assure you it's very greasy. Perhaps Ricard flew up and ran across there, I'm not too sure.
What else did you tell him before he went out, before your co-driver John Harvey took over?
Just go for it. Go. Bit of oil on the track, and but he'll have a cider for a lap or two. And when you've got new tyres, they perform very well on oil. So by and large, I think John should be settling in now and sort of keeping his eye on Dick.
Right, now what went wrong with the pit stop here, Peter? What happened here in the pit stop?
Well, we were too close to the edge there, and because Warren Cullen was in front of us. And unfortunately, the back wheel's in this broken dirt, which is very bad, and they couldn't get the jack to sit correctly on the ground. It was tipping over all the time, so they had to hold the car and try and lift it up squarely. You can see that it's broken away and it's sitting over.
I thought you did well to dodge the jack because that was placed for there being no car in front. You had to come in a straight line.
I had to come forward and back in, and when you've got the 6-point harness on and the helmet, whatever, the peripheral vision is very, very poor. And anyway, I don't park too well anyway. I'm better at 100 mile an hour.
Well, there you are. The man who goes well quickly, not so well when he's going slowly. Back to you, Mike Raymond.
Okay, thanks very much, Evan. Well, what a race of changing fortunes with Dick Johnson spinning early, staying out on the track for a few more laps, the lead going to Peter Brock, Warren Cullen moving up to second, then pitting, then Brock pitting, getting wedged against the fence, couldn't affect the best pit stop, and now we have Dick Johnson back in front, leading from Barry Jones in the RX-7, and then John Harvey, who would be up into third place, just clear of Alan Grice and Kevin Butler.
20 seconds is the gap between Dick Johnson and John Harvey in third spot. The pair, as Mike Raymond said, split by Barry Jones in the RX-7. Alan Grice right on the hammer of the leading trio in the JPS BMW car 11. Bartlett back in the thick of things. He had a very early pit stop for tyres. He was right up with the front runners at that stage. It put him down a lap, but he's got back up a bit into fifth spot overall. Warren Cullen, by virtue of a slow pit stop as well, has slipped back to 8th position at the present time.
There's True Blue out in front. The Bathurst Rock victim, looking good, heading to the checkered flag, but it's still a long way from dropping. Dick Johnson leads from Barry Jones and the Darrell Lee RX-7 Mazda. John Harvey, who has taken over the driving, of course, for Peter Brock, is currently placed third in the race. And fourth is Alan Grice, fifth Kevin Bartlett.
Just below our infield camera position here at Amaroo Park, right opposite the official control tower, car 77, Williamson Salika, has expired, and I don't know quite what the problem was, but of course we saw maybe a result of the difficulties they had earlier with that fire hose that was wrapped up underneath the car. A very disappointed Peter Williamson has stalked away from the scene.
Also out is the driver of car number 4, Tony Edmondson, as we pick up on our race leader, Dick Johnson of Queensland, now with that 20-second edge over John Harvey. And we'll continue to time for you. There is our second place driver in the race. That's Barry Jones in the Darrell Lee RX-7 Mazda. And what a great outing too for this particular driver and this car. They have the peripheral ported modifications carried out. The car is running superbly here today. And what a great forerunner for this particular team going to Bathurst, of course. For the James Hardy 1000, we have dilemma. I'll go back to that in a second.
Johnson's
I've got a
off
feeling
in the pits.
We've got Dick Johnson back in the pit area, but we'll have to double check that for you. Evan Green would be on the spot down there because we missed Johnson all of a sudden. He just
No, there he is.
He's back out again.
Apologies.
We've got the area bugged so well here today, with everyone looking around the circuit. Johnson apparently was held up behind cars for about 4 seconds, and our spotters missed and thought he'd gone to the pits. Dick Johnson with that buffer. We'll check the time for you to see what time he did lose to John Harvey. Harvey, of course, is in third place, and in second place in the race, the RX-7, driven by Barry Jones. And I was saying earlier, is one of a number of the peripheral ported Mazdas that will be going to Bathurst, and the driver, of course, everyone will be looking forward to seeing at Bathurst will be Alan Moffat.
Still 20 seconds, the break between Dick Johnson in the race lead and John Harvey in the third spot. I think the 4-cylinder class leader might have expired. Graham Bailey and the Chickadee Salika.
Yes, it's at its feather, Sean. It's a bit of a problem for Graham Bailey because he's been very, very consistent here, not only during the course of the recent the Better Break series, but was running strongly in the field. There's Barry Jones coming down towards Winfield in second place in the race in car number 41. Right behind him, Steve Masterton. Fred Geisler is the next one, and Warren Cullen, who is also back in the fray again. But because of his pit stop, he's back to about 8th place, but starting to come back through the field. Back in the pit area again. Our people tell us that at the top of Bitchapave Hill there is a very big oil slick, and that is giving the drivers a lot of problems indeed, including Graham Bailey. There's the flag out to signal to the drivers there is oil on the circuit.
The reason it was Bailey's problem is because he left it.
That's right. David Selden. That is Phil Ward now in the car.
Now the class leader.
Gemini Isuzu, as it heads out and doing quite nicely indeed in its class here today in the CRC. Well, it's a race that no one could put the glasses down and say Johnson has won as yet. A spin, a slow pit stop, but a methodical one. It looked rather unprofessional. I'll say that about the pit stop, but they did their homework right. They've changed all 4 tyres, so Johnson is out on complete fresh rubber. The 41 car, the Darrell Lee RX-7, running strongly in second with Barry Jones at the wheel, right behind the Masterton, but he's not in the top 3. In fact, Masterton coming through the field at the moment to 6th place. And we'll give you a recap of the position shortly as they come over the hill with Barry Jones. albeit nicely, in the Darrell Lee sponsored entry.
The other of the peripheral ported Mazdas, the Australian Autoglass sponsored car, 30, driven by Peter McLeod, had a very early stop, but is back in the race and doing pretty well, fairly well back midfield, but still circulating a lot better than some of the other cars.
Lap number 94. Let's go through the Phillips scoreboard in the CRC Chemicals 300. In first place is Dick Johnson of Queensland in car number 17. Second place is Barry Jones in the RX-7 Capri. Third place is held by John Harvey in the Marlboro Holden Dealer Team Commodore. Fourth place to Alan Grice in the JPS BMW. In fifth place is Kevin Bartlett in the Network 9 Camaro. In sixth place is Steve Masterton in the Masterton Holmes Capri. We'll drop off that for a moment and come back to Barry Jones, second place driver, coming into the pit area at the moment. And Dick Johnson lapping in 57.4, so the 20-second buffer still remains between Dick Johnson and John Harvey. So Harvey at this stage is not making up ground on Dick Johnson. Okay, Evan Green, take it away in the pit area.
The car that has been running second with Barry Jones in the rotary Mazda has come in for a pit stop. Tyre's been changed. The car's not quite up on the jack, as you can see, but Jeff Leeds is taking over while the mechanic struggles on to change the right-hand front wheel. Now, this is a car that inherited second place. Bobby Morris, you're saying he's got an especially large fuel tank.
This car is running in the outright division because it's peripheral ported, and it has a very large fuel tank, the same as the Falcons and the Mazdas and the Commodores. That's why it's enabled it to go a lot further than most of the other cars.
They've got an elaborate jack too, Bob, but they haven't quite got it in place by the look of it because the car is up unevenly.
I think that the problem here is that the ground is slightly uneven, and they've done it all on the workshop floor, and the left front wheel, the right front wheel, has no wheel nuts on it, yet the wheel is still not off the ground.
They're having trouble with that. Maybe the weight of the driver makes a change too. Now they've lifted it up and the wheel change is being effected.
It's not a bad stop. They're still having trouble with that right wheel. It's all right to do these things in the workshop, and some of the things work quite well on very level ground, but here we've got grit, uneven ground, racing conditions.
It's a very unhappy Barry Jones too, just in the background there, waving his hand with distress at the time being lost, time that he'd gained on the track and now being lost in the pits. The last of the wheel that's going on, the elaborate jack out of the way. The driver will have to be very careful to avoid running over the jack, or else he'll do tyre damage. He just caught the edge of the jack, and Jeff Leeds takes the RX-7 Mazda out on the track. Well, the action's continuing here at Amaroo Park. We'll be returning soon to the CRC 300.
Okay, welcome back to Amaroo Park Raceway and the running of the CRC Chemicals 300-kilometre Enduro. Almost up to 100 laps completed as we pan across the lake, and you can see the short run that the cars have, in fact, from that corner down to Winfield. There's Alan Grice in the John Player BMW, currently placed third in the race. Alan, of course, would also be leading the six-cylinder class. There's John Harvey. The car right behind Harvey is smoking badly. It's Geisler from the Goulburn area. Here's Harvey coming down on the inside of Steve Masterton, takes Masterton and the Masterton Team Capri. Geisler is the next one through, and Barry Jones in the Darrell Lee Mazda.
Dick Johnson's increasing that break over John Harvey too. It's about 23.5 seconds.
Well, Harvey's been forced, of course, to jump into the car in a fairly tight situation. I think the last thing in John's mind would be wanting to bend the car. He'll be co-driving in this year's James Hardy 1000 Classic, which will be seen, of course, across Australia on the Channel 7 network on Sunday, October the 4th. And his co-driver will be Vern Schuppen, the Australian international who finished third in the Indianapolis 500 this year, one of two open-wheel Australian stars. The other, of course, being Australia's Formula One world champion, Alan Jones. Geisler just behind him, really starting to emit a lot of smoke.
I think we might be saying goodbye to him very shortly.
Behind him, Steve Masterton, and then Barry Jones.
Harvey in pursuit of Dick Johnson, back in the race lead after that slowish pit stop, awkward pit stop by the dealer team.
Co-driving with Warren Cullen for the race today in the number 12 Settlement Road Auto Wreckers Commodore is in fact Gary Cook. Cook, I think, would be in the car at the moment following their last pit stop. Harvey just coming up trying to unwind himself from the laps, and certainly to put one on the top of Gary Cook and Warren Cullen.
Cullen's been criticised, probably not the right word, but a lot of people have drawn attention to the fact that he doesn't drive too often. He's not seen on the racetrack too often. I asked him about that, and he said that's been intentional. He drove through 76, 77, 78, 79, and then decided that if he was going to do it, he wanted to do it properly, and he took a year off to organise a professional team.
Well, he did that properly, had the tail hanging on the concrete, and John Harvey having a little cardiac arrest, he should be able to pass Cullen easily. But at this stage, he hasn't. Cullen, or Gary Cook, I should say, the co-driver, is now at the wheel, doing it quite nicely indeed, hoping that, that he doesn't get carried away too much. Harvey now tucks in on the inside, but finds himself still sitting behind the tail of the Commodore driven by Cook. Just in front of them is the Channel 9 Camaro driven by Kevin Bartlett that is still running fourth in the race. So a good outing for Kevin Bartlett today. It shows the car can stop, it can run strongly, and it's going to be totally competitive come the James Hardy on October the 4th in Bathurst. Again, this great dice between Cook and John Harvey.
Slowing Harvey up there because it's allowing Dick Johnson to spear away in front. The gap is fairly considerable now between Dick Johnson and John Harvey.
Oh, Harvey doing a bit of the old speedway stuff, absolutely sideways coming out of the corner, 24.95 seconds. Oh, and Gary Cook was even worse. He was sideways in the straightaway. Okay, they both come up to overlap some of the four-cylinder cars heading up the hill. They overtake car number 21, Alexandra Surplus, who has anything but abundance of horsepower as she reaches the top of the hill in close company with these two V8 Chargers through Dunlop Loop.
Let's stress that Dick Johnson in the True Blue Falcon, car 17, and John Harvey in the dealer team Commodore 05 are the only two cars on the lead lap. Third placed car is the JPS BMW of Alan Grice, car number 11, and he is 2 laps down on the leading pair. And there he is, Alan Grice, in fact, just behind, but 2 laps behind, in fact, Dick Johnson, as they spear up and over the top of Bitchapave Hill once more. Back here, this little dice is still going on, but finally, Harvey's got past Cullen, and now he's got that gap running up to about 24, 25 seconds to make up on Dick Johnson.
Well,
104
Johnson,
laps down.
104 laps down. At this stage in the race, Dick Johnson beautifully in command with about still that 22, 23 second buffer over John Harvey in second place. Grice is third. Kevin Bartlett in the Camaro is placed fourth. They were just clear of Barry Jones in the RX-7 Mazda. Then Warren Cullen. There's more motor racing action live coming your way when we return to the CRC live at Amaroo Park. Live back at Amaroo Park, we pick up on Phil Ward in the Sutton's Gemini Isuzu, coming out of the corner, leader in the class for the four-cylinder cars, doing it nicely. Phil Ward, of course, has taken over during the pit stop. Comes onto the front straight away, and I don't think having any problems at all at the moment. So it's good to see the leader of that category, in the four-cylinder category, out in front.
And in 9th position outright, 5 laps down on the race leader, Dick Johnson. And Dick still circulating in that time, is he? 57.5?
26 starters, of course, in the CRC Chemicals 300. 16 are left after 107 laps. So apart from the fact that Charlie O'Brien had a burnout, and Colin Bond, of course, was smoking profusely. Murray Carter is parked up at the top of the hill, and so too is Graham Bailey. The attrition rate has been not bad at all.
That little Gemini, by the way, is now into 7th position outright, as well as leading
this is
the four-cylinder class.
Good dice, this one that we're following. They're just ahead of Phil Ward in the number 7 car as they come on to front straight away. But Kevin Bartlett will pick them up at the Bitchapave, at the top of Bitchapave, coming down into Dunlop Loop. Kevin Bartlett about to be lapped, a lap down, put a lap on by John Harvey. Kevin's trying to prove that the big Camaro's got plenty of squirt in a straight line, and no one's going to deny that fact. And today he can stop it too, which is good because he's got the 4-wheel brakes. And right behind Harvey, of course, is Barry Jones. And let me remind you that Barry Jones is currently in 5th place in the race.
He's on the same lap as Kevin Bartlett as well. So
Kevin Bartlett currently placed 4th and Barry Jones is 5th. And mixed up in their personal dice happens to be John Harvey. And Harvey might have the lie off the turn this time. No, the Camaro's got the squirt, but I think Harvey, no, he hasn't got the line. Jones sits in. Jones doesn't really want anything to do with John Harvey. He just wants to nail Kevin Bartlett, because if he can pass Bartlett, that'll move him 1 spot up on the grid, and that'll put them up into 4.
Somebody's off and causing a great deal of smoke. Here we are, it's the Giesler car. It's been dropped a smoke cloud bigger than a tribe of Red Indians.
Yes, well, Fred's put it in the right place down near the lake. The Bayline Lodge at Bondi. Geisler Ozuzu from Goulburn, bad luck indeed. He came out and ran the car for the first time in the CRC last year and went very well in the old Hardy Ferrado. Obviously looking forward to going well in the new look. James Hardy 1000 on October the 4th. Okay, little tap, no. Sitting right in on the inside, looking for the lie coming out of the turn. Kevin Bartlett in the number 9 Camaro, and John Harvey trying desperately to get past Kevin Bartlett so he can start to try and haul in the race leader.
I was about to say, Harv's going to get very frustrated here shortly, because all this time Dick Johnson is probably extending that gap that was around 24-second mark. We'll check it again shortly. But whilst Harvey in 05 is caught up in this little traffic jam here, it's allowing Dick Johnson a lot of freedom of movement up front, because with the field now reduced to 15 cars, there is not as much traffic for Dick Johnson.
59.2 was the last lap where we accredited to Kevin Bartlett. And of course Johnny Harvey, who I think was doing 58s or 58 evens, 58 and a half. So he slowed down by a second, and look at the little guy in the Mazda, and that's Barry Jones in the Darrell Lee car, really getting the sniff of victory, or as at least a sniff for 4th place. Okay, this time Harvey says, you've left the door open, Kevin, here I come, down the inside, takes him under brakes. Hopefully he doesn't get the tail out too far, and he's managed to take Bartlett and still maintain his 2nd place in the event. Right behind him though, we have car number 41, of course, which is the Barry Jones car, and close company behind them, Warren Cullen, or Gary Cook in the number 12 car.
Yeah, that's their race, their order in the race as well. Those 3 cars there. Bartlett in the lead in that division is running 4th overall, followed by Barry Jones, who's running 5th, and then Gary Cook, Cullen Commodore, is running 6th. So this should be a big dice going on between these 3 in the next few laps.
Okay, the pits might be a little quieter. We might have an opportunity to go down and check out what's been in and what's out there with Evan Green. Come in, Evan.
One of the reasons that car 7, the Sutton's Motors Gemini, is running in 8th place outright, which is an incredible result, was due to the fact that it made the most rapid of all the pit stops, being in here for a little over half a minute to change tyres and rubber. And part of it is due to a demon tweak developed by the team manager, George Shepherd. George, I haven't seen a quick lift jacking system like the one you developed for the Gemini.
Well, we're forced into it, Evan, because the normal air jack won't fit underneath the Gemini sill panel. It's too low, so we had to make something to reach down low.
Let's have a look at it and tell us just what it's all about then.
Righto. Well, it's just made out of tubular steel and aluminium. The brackets on that lift the car are aluminium. The airbag fits underneath the aluminium S-bend, which picks down low and goes under and lifts the car. Quite simple, really.
And you get an instantaneous lift?
Yeah, instantaneous. By the time they've undone 2 wheel nuts, the car is fully up, and then, of course, it's ready to go down whenever they are.
Well, just another example of how ingenuity can really save time in a race where pit stops are as important as the CRC 300. And talking of pit stops, the word is that the Kevin Bartlett car, being driven by Bobby Forbes, will be coming into the pits in about 1 lap time, so we'll be ready for that. In the meantime, while we take a breather and dodge the traffic, back once again to you, Mike Raymond.
Okay, thanks very much, Evan. We still have this great dice continuing. Kevin Bartlett's trying to hold out Gary Cook in the 12 car and Barry Jones in the number 41 car. This time we'll see who's got the best brakes. Bartlett's pushed wide. Jones says, I'll have a slice of that action, and I'll also carry on with Cook while I'm at it. Oops, almost a little touch of wheels. Bartlett's gone to the pits anyway, so that will automatically move number 41 up a spot. And he, at this stage, is putting plenty of pressure on Gary Cook, who is driving the Warren Cullen car, number 12. Over the top, past the Marlborough Crest down into Dunlop Loop. There goes the Bates Craft Capri. Cook is the next one through, and followed by Barry Jones, or Jeff Leeds, of course, driving that car in the second run. Kevin Bartlett is in the pits. out the back, I believe, with some problems. We'll have a report from Evan Green as soon as he's ready down in the pit area. Rather congested place, let me tell you, this afternoon. But I think motorsporting fans, and particularly Mazda stalwarts, should be very impressed today with the form of Barry Jones. And you'll have another bespectacled gentleman by the name of Alan Moffat to cheer at the James Hardy 1000 come October the 4th, when Moffat goes after an outright win in the RX-7. Well, the rating's not too good at the moment in the pit area, but we'll go down to Evan Green, who's now making way across to Bob Forbes. Car is in the pits, obviously, for a tyre change, I would think. Evan just checks out to see, in fact, what they're doing there. But I've been quite surprised how well the car's been running today. It was a very, very fast car. It got pole position for the Hardy Classic last year at Bathurst. And out they go again. I think Kev Bartlett at the wheel. Heads out through the pit road in the direction of the racetrack. As the laps dwindle by, Dick Johnson of Queensland leads the Marlborough Holden Dealer Team Commodore in the CRC Classic here at Amaroo Park.
Still 29 seconds up on John Harvey in the Dealer Team Commodore. Harvey's got a bit of ground to make up after getting caught up in that squeeze between Gary Cook and Barry Jones. We'll be back with more action on lap 115 of the CRC 300 here at Amaroo Park after this.
Welcome back to the CRC 300 at Amaroo Park Raceway. There's our race leader, Dick Johnson. There's the Phillips Car Stereo scoreboard. Shows Johnson in first place, John Harvey in the Marlborough Holden Dealer Team Commodore in second. 2 laps back in third is Alan Grice in the JPS BMW, followed by Warren Cullen and Cook in the Commodore. In car number 41 in 5th place is Barry Jones. Car number 32 in 6th place is Steve Masterton.
I believe, I could be corrected, Mike, that that's the only car, Steve Masterton, that hasn't had a pit stop.
Could well be. In 7th place, of course, we have Kevin Bartlett in car number 9, the V8 Camaro. Then, of course, the Selden Gemini Isuzu, which is up very, very close indeed in the top 10. So the laps run out. About 38 laps or so, I think, still remain in the CRC Classic. Evan Green is ready for us, so take it away, Evan, in the pits.
From 3rd to 7th after one pit stop for tyres. An extra stop compared to others. That was the fate of car 9. Bob Forbes, you hand it over to Kevin Bartlett. Why the extra stop?
Well, our tyres, Evan, with 500 horsepower around here, we just couldn't possibly keep the rear tyres on it. We were trying to drive the car as smoothly as possible, but unfortunately it's just not possible to drive it smooth enough to allow for only one stop.
How's the car going to be at Bathurst?
The car will be fine at Bathurst. This is quite an experiment coming out of this very tight circuit. It's really for very small cars, it suits the smaller cars, and we're also about 300 or 400 pounds heavier than the next closest car. So once the circuit got very oily, 2 cars blew motors, one in the main straight and one in the corner, and the car became diabolical for about 15 laps there, but it's okay now. Most of the oil dissipated.
It must be about the hardest drive of your life, I would think.
I reckon so, yeah. I was glad to get out of it.
Bob Forbes, and once again back to you, Mike Raymond.
Okay, thanks, Evan, and thank you, Bob Forbes. Okay, Phil Ward in the Gemini Sutton's Motors car, first in class in the top 10 overall, just ahead of Kevin Bartlett in the 9 Camaro. You've heard the story from Bob Forbes of how diabolical the car was to run when they were experiencing excessive tyre wear and all the oil over the circuit, trying to ride with roller skates on ice.
Back up front, the lead is still 28 seconds for Dick Johnson over John Harvey in the Dealer Team 05 Commodore, and they're 2 laps up on the remainder, the survivors in the field after 120 laps of the 1981 CRC 300. 30 seconds is the gap between Alan Grice in 3rd place and Warren Cullen, or Gary Cook, in that car that he's sharing with Warren Cullen today in 4th place.
Well, the question, I suppose, has to be asked, who is going to win the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst? We have a curtain raiser, of course, at Amaroo Park today in the CRC Chemicals 300. There, of course, is the Sandown 400 kilometre race in September. But at the moment, it would certainly appear that Dick Johnson has a very comfortable edge over the Dealer Team here today. It's been very, very close on the National Touring Car Championship trail all season. But who knows what Alan Moffat will bring to Bathurst. The experience of the man who has won at Bathurst more often than not. The combination of Alan Jones, who has just been magnificent in his attack for the World Drivers' Championship for the second year this year, although robbed by bad luck. Vern Shupin, who knows the Bathurst track better than anyone else, third place in this year's Indianapolis 500. David Hobbs of North America, who'll be coming to co-drive with Alan Grice and the JPS machine, just going over the top now and coming down into the corner. Any number of questions to be answered. John Harvey, of course, will be co-driving with Vern Shupin that I mentioned earlier. And the big Camaro that last year showed that it could get around Bathurst quicker than any other car, but it couldn't stop as well. But this year they've fixed that. They've got four-wheel disc brakes on it, and whether Bartlett is going to be the huge threat that everyone thought he would be last year. As this race progresses, we remind viewers across Australia on the Channel 7 network not to forget our enormous telecast of the James Hardy 1000 on Sunday, October the 4th. On air at 5 minutes to 8. And carrying right through the race, and of course our in-car camera coverage that has been pioneered by Channel 7. Bringing you, we're not saying who just at the moment, but plenty of surprises, and we'll be putting you in the driver's seat again. Magnificent helicopter shots as well. Terry Lee, the biggest sporting telecast of the year, the James Hardy 1000. You'll see it live Sunday, October the 4th, right throughout Australia, and for the first time ever throughout the United States on the CBS network a couple of weeks later.
Dick Johnson at the head of the field, still lapping in 28.02 seconds, but John Harvey's lapping a fraction faster, has cut Dick Johnson's lead now to 24 seconds. They're 2 laps up on Alan Grice, who has a comfortable lead in third spot over Gary Cook, and then Barry Jones. That's, in fact, the one head-to-head dice that's going on the circuit at the moment is between Gary Cook and Barry Jones for 4th and 5th position. They're very close, and they've got a battle going on.
John Harvey, of course, placed second at the moment, has done very little driving since the Bathurst Classic last year. I think drove only in Adelaide in the Manufacturers' Championship race, where he finished second to teammate Peter Brock. This is his second race. He's stepped into the car while the car was leading the event. Has driven it very, very well, starting to make just a little bit of ground, but he'll need to start making it in 2-second grab shortly on Dick Johnson. Still running at 58.5 seconds, so Harvey is well and truly on the pace. But I don't think it's a track that the dealer team like to bring their car to. Usually they campaign the Manufacturers' Championship races with their 2 cars. Peter Brock and John Harvey believe that to run 2 cars here is the risk of maybe taking a victory away with one and taking one home in a dump truck. A lot of passing, a lot of slower cars, everyone really on their mettle driving at Amaroo Park. It's a most unforgiving circuit, but those who drive it well usually win. Driver fatigue would be one point that would be paramount in a lot of people's minds, and certainly the team managed. Perhaps we might go to the pit area and take up this point with Evan Green.
The race has now achieved probably its most fascinating segment, where drivers are likely to make mistakes through fatigue. Your analysis of it, Bobby Morris.
Well, I think the circuit is extremely slippery. There's a lot of oil out there, there's a lot of rubber out there, and combine that with a few tired drivers with worn tyres, and anything can happen. Now, if we can look at this corner here, we have a fair idea of the different lines that some of the drivers take. Most of them at this stage are trying to drive very smoothly, conserve their tyres. Dick Johnston, for instance, he's driving extremely carefully, keeping on the throttle. Alan Grice, I think, is still driving fairly exuberantly, sliding the car around. Kevin Bartlett in the big Chev is still having a go with his because he has fresh tyres on, remember. The Mazdas are driving nicely, the Capri and Escort, they're all driving fairly straight. Most of the small cars can drive very smooth and fast. John Harvey is driving very smoothly, even though he's trying to catch up to the Falcon. Here we have the good dice with Warren Cullen and Jeff Leeds. They're out at Hammer and Tongs, but still the cars are still fairly straight.
They're trying to save those tyres for the last few laps.
Now, Dick Johnson has been in the car all the time by himself, whereas the man pursuing him, even a little bit further back now, John Harvey, is fairly fresh. Is that going to be a real factor?
Well, it could be, although Dick has done a lot of racing this year. He keeps himself extremely fit, and I think he's driving the Falcon well within his limits.
Okay, back to you then, Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Evan, and our thanks to Bobby Morris, who is helping out in the pit area today with some advice, certainly an insight into the driver's view of the CRC 300 here today. Almost the Dow faced Dick Johnson. He's anything but Dow when he's out of the car. Very outgoing personality, quite a nice guy. Very busy today because after this race he'll be participating in the Barclays Pro-Am race for television viewers. Dick Johnson out in front. Will it be the same in the James Hardy 1000 a little later? We'll come back with more exciting motor racing action live from Amaroo Park.
25 laps to go in the CRC 300 for the two leading cars at the moment, Dick Johnson and John Harvey. But this is the dice that's going on 2 laps back for 4th and 5th positions, splitting the leading pair, and these two, Alan Grice in the JPS BMW. We've now got here Gary Cook and Jeff Leeds in the peripheral ported Mazda, and they're getting hung up in a little bit of traffic there with a little Corolla. But these two are 30 seconds behind Alan Grice and are really having a battle royal here for 4th and 5th positions.
That was bad luck that time with the slower car holding them up, because Jones has been, the Jones entry of course, with holding down the position right behind 5th overall in the race, and sitting right in behind Gary Cook in the Warren Cullen Settlement Auto Wreckers car. We'll see if he can pull that back on him, because they're on the same lap.
No trouble closing the gap, it's just that he just doesn't seem to have the power to get past.
Well, the car is fairly quick up the hill, but has been amazingly quick down through the tight part of the course. There you can see Cook starting to pull out just behind Wilmington's car, the Betsy sponsored Falcon. And then again caught up is Leeds in the Darrell Lee. He's run into the same traffic problem in that
David
corner.
Selden there in the Isuzu.
Well, he's managed to clear them. But this time, Cook now works away at Wilmington. Or Bob Stevens, it could be the co-driver coming down the back part of the course. Leeds, of course, running back behind him, but at this stage, number 12 is forced to just sit in behind Wilmington. Wilmington has made no move at this stage to move across the track and let 12 through. It should happen here. No, I don't think it is, and that, of course, has now given the opening to the Mazda to move up again, so we do it all over again for one more lap to see if he can effect a pass on Gary Cook in number 12. Well, Cook was very sideways that time next to Wilmington. We'll probably take Wilmington here. That leaves Jones, or the Jones car, at this stage, caught 3 wide, and again he's got a traffic problem with overlap cars as they come over the hill, but he manages to now settle back into 5th place, sitting in behind number 12 driven by Gary Cook, and that's the Warren Cullen car.
These two cars, of course, 2 laps down on Dick Johnson, the race leader, followed by 05 for Commodore, the Holden dealer team driven by John Harvey. They are 2 laps up from Alan Grice. Grice 30 seconds ahead of this pair, the Cullen Commodore and the Darrell Lee Mazda RX-7. Steve Masterton, by the way, is on the same lap as this pair. So we've got the 2 leading cars.
Oh, dearie me, I thought at that stage Jeff Leeds was going to resurrect the concrete wall down there. He let the tail loose of it and almost caught the front fender in the wall, but managed to straighten up, didn't actually clip the fence. And just a split-second break in concentration, that's all it needs. This is the danger period of the race now.
Johnson and Harvey on lap 133, and on lap 131, we've got Alan Grice, Warren Cullen.
One lap, on the same lap, of course.
On the same lap, we also have Barry Jones and Steve Marston.
That's the official Phillips car stereo CRC Chemicals score chart, as you can see. Race leader, Dick Johnson of Queensland in the Ford, John Harvey in 05, Alan Grice in number 11. And It would appear at this stage that Harvey is starting to make up ground again. It was about 28 seconds. It dropped down to about 24, and now down to about 19 seconds. So John Harvey in the latter stages now of the CRC race is starting to, we won't say pressure Dick Johnson, but certainly starting to get within sniffing distance of a win. The die still continues. Can leads this time. Managed to effect a pass on Cook in the number 12 car. They are very close indeed as they work away at the back part of the track, the tricky part of the circuit. Commodore, of course, has the legs down here. But the Mazda just tucks right in and keeps on coming. Goes into the corners, brakes a little later, as you can see. And he'll be looking at coming out on the inside of Cook, I would think. But Cook has the sting with the V8 as they come off the corner. Now, a short run down the straightaway with the slight kink in it towards Winfield. That's our next camera position. Leeds goes in very hard indeed. A better line that time through the corner. And our next shot will pick them up coming back onto the front straight. There's Wilmington going through, and the die still continues. A little sideways in the front straightaway that time was Gary Cook. However, our race leader is Dick Johnson in number 17, the true blue entry. Holding down second, John Harvey.
Yes, although Alan Grice is 2 laps down on the race leader Dick Johnson, they're in close proximity at the present time, and Grice physically in the rear of Dick Johnson has closed that gap up by about 50 metres in the last couple of laps. So Dick Johnson definitely is slowing down a little.
Well, I think Johnson at this stage would want to conserve. Oh, Grice says, no way, I'm going for a shot here on the inside. Johnson got an outside tyre off onto the rock area there. Now, that will probably cut a second or 2 seconds off. Now he gets back on the tailpipe of Grice and will decide if he's going to go racing again or whether he's just conserving the final 23 or 24 circuits of this 300-kilometre event.
So Grice is now 1 lap down, and not 2 laps down on the race leader.
And an interesting experiment for Johnson to sit in behind Grice and just see what the John Player BMW has to offer. Obviously, he's got more straightaway sting, but at this time, he's not under serious pressure of being harassed by John Harvey.
The gap between Johnson and Harvey coming down even further to a touch under 17 seconds. Oh, 17 seconds, and how many laps to go? It's going to be tight if things keep going at this rate.
Alan Grice holding a good line. The success story of the race so far. Alan Grice started off the rear of the grid and now up into 3rd place and 1 lap down on the leaders. It's Grice.
Is this? No, he's got passed by just further back with that dice that we had before between the Cullen's Commodore and.
Yes, coming up the top of the hill. We'll wait for those.
Darrell Lee Mazda.
Dunlop Loop shortly as we wait for our 4th place driver and 5th place driver, Gary Cook in number 12 and Jeff Leeds. Here it is. This has really been storming for the last few laps. We went away from it to follow Alan Grice. They've been swapping and changing positions. We come back to it again. Keeping in mind Grice is placed 3rd, and 4th place is the driver you see leading this bunch, Gary Cook in number 12, the Warren Cullen Commodore. And then 5th place right behind him is this very high-pressure Mazda RX-7, the peripheral ported version, driven by Jeff Leeds and started the race by Barry Jones. That's probably the biggest gap that Cook has had over the Mazda in the past 10 laps. But it's a good outing for the car and the Enduro here today. They're running quite strongly. In 4th place. Over the top of the Marlborough Loop down into Dunlop.
Well, Jones actually got past him on that previous lap, or Jeff Leeds, who's driving the RX-7 at the moment, actually got past the Commodore after trying for countless laps. And Cook has got him again. And has opened up, as you said, Mike, the best break that he's had in the last 45 minutes.
Well, their little dice continues for 4th and 5th place. The race leader, Dick Johnson, we still have the watch on to see what the buffer is between he and John Harvey and the Marlborough Holden Dealer Team Commodore. We've seen Grace, he's a lap in back in third.
With 16 laps to go, the gap is 16 seconds.
Well, if John Harvey is to win the CRC, it needs to be second a lap. Okay, Evan Green is in the pit area as we follow Dick Johnson heading down into the right-hander at Winfield. Still a couple of cars, Steve Masterton and Alan Grice marginally in front of him. But it would seem at this stage that Johnson is playing a conserving role, but John Harvey is starting to really pound the horsepower. If Evan Green is ready for us, take it away, Evan.
In the pits, a tense game of tactics are being played. Here in the Marlborough Holden Dealer Team pit, they're giving signals to John Harvey. Right alongside you, just behind you, the same for Dick Johnson, because John Harvey has been catching Dick Johnson by as much as 3 seconds a lap. Now, Peter Brock, can he catch him?
I don't think he can, actually. I just...
How's he made up so much ground?
Dick's tyres have had it. That's why I wanted to go to extra 20-odd laps earlier and try and give John a cushion, which unfortunately we lost during the pit stop. And then John got caught very badly behind Bob Forbes in the Channel 9 Camaro and cost him 10 seconds. Right now he'd be 5 seconds behind, but he threw away that 10 seconds just through not getting by. So John's tyres will be a little bit in better condition than Dick's. But I don't know. He might have shot his bolt, actually, because he's gone now. Dick's going by now. John is about the same position now on the road as what he was the lap before. 10-odd laps, 15 laps to go. Very dicey. But
here he comes now.
Yeah. But he's holding station with a little Mazda.
Maybe we can have a look at the signal that actually was given to him.
15.7. Well, he gained a second the last lap, and he's lapped in a 58.8 second. Which
so he gained 1 second that last lap?
He gained 1 second, yes, but 58.8's nowhere near good enough. He should be doing 57.8 or 58 dead at this stage of the race, but I don't know. I'm not out there. They might be all everywhere. And the point is, if he's caught Dick a second, well, either Dick's in big trouble or Dick's playing a very cagey run to the flag. I don't know.
Well, that's an answer we're going to find out fairly soon as the next pit signal is being assembled. What do the lines mean, Peter?
14. He's down now to 14 odd.
That's the gap between him and the car in front.
It's actually place, but we've thrown the place away at the moment. Just put minus 14.5, which is self-explanatory. 57.7. That's more like the lap he should be doing. And then L underneath is the number of laps, 141, and John knows he's got about 14 to 15 to go.
How would he be feeling out in the car at the moment?
He'd be feeling a bit frustrated because he knows that he just about had him before, and then he got caught behind. We had Dick on ice before, and Dick spun over there. I thought, Beaut, we'll get enough on you here, Dick, you won't be able to get it back. But, you know, that's the fortunes of long-distance racing, and good luck to Dick if he does win.
Peter Brock, and back to you in the main commentary position, Mike Raymond.
Okay, Evan, well, that's the job for Johnny Harvey. You've got 14 laps, and you're 14 seconds behind. The interesting last lap. Dick Johnson is certainly just taking it easy. In fact, he was rather slow coming out of Mazda that time.
In that minor tussle for 4th and 5th places, Mike, between Gary Cook and the Warren Cullen Commodore and the Mazda RX-7 of Barry Jones. The RX-7's lost out, and the Cullen Commodore's broken right away from him now by a good 50 metres or so.
Well, if this race has been hard on tyres here today at Amaroo Park, it would certainly have a few of the teams wondering about the combinations for the James Hardy race. It was a race last year that most of the teams attacked, knew that they would be up for one tyre change. Yet today, although the pace has been on a little more than last year, I think that Dick Johnson at this stage is conserving for the fact that he's feeling the pinch as far as rubber is concerned. Okay, Dick Johnson coming down, left-hander this time at Honda Corner, comes out. He has a number of the smaller category cars in front of him. Now he's got to start playing chess games now to block them quite nicely, put them in between himself and John Harvey and make sure that Harvey has a few obstacles to overcome when he arrives.
2 cars ahead of Dick Johnson at the moment. We've got the Masterton Capri, car 32, driven by Steve Masterton. That car, with 13 laps to go, has not been in the pits. Now, I don't know how, but it hasn't been in the pits.
Okay, well, that's the case. They have something to tell everyone in regard to fuel consumption, for sure. There's the Barry Jones car. They've got problems with that car, so that could effectively drop it out of the running from 5th place and allow Masterton to come up. But there's more interesting motor racing, believe me, when we return to Amaroo Park Raceway for the concluding stages of the CRC 300. Seven seconds, the difference between Dick Johnson, who has made signals that he may be going to the pit area to change a tyre. John Harvey is now on the scent of victory as he can spot Dick Johnson ahead of him. The gap was 28 seconds, 24, 17, 11, and now 7, and probably down to 6 this next lap around.
Well, Harvey's made up 12 seconds in the last 10 laps.
4.71 seconds is the gap between Dick Johnson, who this time stays out against the wall. See if he's going into the pit area. No, he's not. They've got about 9 laps remaining in this race. Into the pits, Evan Green. Take it away, Evan.
In the pits, the Dick Johnson crew have sent the message out to come in for a new tyre. In the pit row, you can see the back, rear, the left-hand tyre to change. But whether Johnson actually obeys it is another matter. He's only got a few laps to go, and he's got a margin between himself and John Harvey, which is shrinking at the rate of 1 second a lap, and he may decide to stay out. But the message on the crew is, come on in. Bobby Morris.
Well, I think that this could be tactically wrong because even if he stays out there and drives around slowly, he'll still have a sure second position. If he stops, he could even be third. The risk is, of course, that he could stay out there and blow the tyre altogether and he's out of the race.
How does a driver make a decision like that when he can't see the tyre that's causing the trouble?
Well, it's very difficult. All he can do is go and feel. And, of course, at this stage of the race, Dick must be very fatigued, and making a decision in a fatigue condition like that can be very difficult for him.
So the closing stages of the CRC 300 are wrapped in drama. Will he come in? The pit want him to. They say it's dangerous to stay out. You've got a better view than we have, Mike. Better tell us what's going on out there.
Thank you, Evan. It's 7 laps remaining, and the gap is almost negligible. There's our race leader, Dick Johnson, almost at a snail's pace, and John Harvey on the scent of victory, out after him with the laps running out in the CRC Classic.
2.7 seconds is the gap between Johnson and Harvey.
Johnson had the race won early, led the race quite comfortably, took a loop that put Peter Brock in front. They came into the pits. Johnson was quicker at his pit stop, went back to lead the race. Harvey has been making up ground in the last 15 laps, and Harvey now really starting to warm to the job of taking the lead and the win in the CRC 300.
After 115 laps, Johnson was lapping in 58 seconds and led Harvey by 30 seconds. Now we're on lap 148, and the gap is 2 seconds.
Johnny Harvey knows he still has enough laps. He can put all the pressure he wants on Johnson, but somehow I think that Johnson is probably going to allow Harvey a very clean pass. We'll worry about that the next lap round. Over the top of Mulberry into the left-hander. A kink to the left, now down to the right as they come into a Dunlop loop. And Johnson, we're going to have to drive very gingerly at this stage if he's got a tyre gone completely off and the crew begging him to come in, and Johnson is staying out there. The only problem, of course, is going to be if that tyre shreds. Harvey says, I'll have a little of the action down the inside this time, and I think Harvey will take him. Moves down the inside and takes Dick Johnson. So Johnson now goes back to second in the race, and the Marlborough Holden dealer Team Commodore, driven by John Harvey, now leads the CRC with the laps running out.
And there's a roar from the crowd on the hill too, as it becomes obvious to them that the Commodore, the dealer Team Commodore with Johnny Harvey at the wheel, has taken the lead. 5 laps to go. Dick Johnson in trouble. One badly worn tyre, ignoring pit signals to come in, trying to stay out on the track. And as Bobby Morris suggested, perhaps would like to stay out there and hang on to second place rather than pit and risk coming in out of the placings altogether.
Well, he's still got quite a good edge over the third place driver, Alan Grice, so even if he conserves even more, he's thrown the race, or given the race to John Harvey. There wasn't too much he could really have done. 15 laps ago, if he'd pitted, Harvey still would have probably outgunned him while he was in the pits. But sad to see, but that's the luck of motor racing. John Harvey now with a whole new purpose, first place prize money, and it's considerable for the CRC race and looking good.
How dramatic the change from the interview with Peter Brock in the pits just a couple of laps ago, who said, I don't think he can catch him.
Well, John Harvey has caught and passed the race leader and now leads the CRC into the final stages. Second place held down by Johnson, a lap in back of the 2 leaders is number 11, Alan Grice, and they were followed by number 12 and Steve Masterton up into 5th. 6th place would be Kevin Bartlett in the 9 Camaro. 7th place at this stage in the race would be the Leeds Darrell Lee Carver. That was really starting to drop out of contention. We'll go to the pits now with Evan Green.
John French is the team manager for Dick Johnson. He's trying to get some help at the moment. We'll get on to him. Are you going to bring him in?
No, I think he'll stay out there till the finish. I think the next car behind is Gricey, and if he stops, he'll lose second place.
Yeah, we'll confirm it.
If his tyre doesn't blow, he won't come in.
How bad is it? Any idea from observation?
I'd reckon it'll be down to the last canvas.
So it's really touch and go.
Oh, yeah. Whether he finishes without wearing it right through is a touch and go, yeah.
John, how must he feel at this moment?
I don't know. Not too good, I don't reckon. I better hang out a signal.
I'll let John French get back to the business of passing a signal because the race not yet is over. And in the meantime, as it draws to a thrilling climax and Dick Johnson seems to be trying to hurry up again, I'll return you once more and probably finally to Mike Raymond.
Okay, Evan, with about 3 laps remaining in the CRC Chemicals 300 here at Amaroo Park. The 05 car driven by John Harvey, still out in front, leading quite nicely from the ailing Dick Johnson car, not ailing in the motor department, but only ailing because the tyre is down to canvas. But Harvey doing it nicely, team manager for the dealer team and also co-driver today with Peter Brock. It'll be a nice feeling for John Harvey to come back in only his second race for 1981 and with a win in the CRC along with Peter Brock.
So Dick Johnson can hang on. It looks at this stage like it'll be a repeat of last year's Quinella finish in the CRC 300 with the dealer team car, Brock and Harvey coming home first ahead of Dick Johnson. That is if Dick Johnson can survive these last couple of laps on that threadbare rear tyre.
John Harvey, I think, would be feeling very good at the moment. Out in front, leading. Laps almost out for John Harvey. Nice feeling. Dick Johnson holding down second in the race in third place. One back behind the leaders is Alan Grice. 4.34 seconds, the difference between the race leader, John Harvey, and, of course, our second place driver, Dick Johnson. So I don't think we could possibly have any more drama written into the last couple of laps of this race. Harvey has done everything expected of him, has managed to pull back the big gap that Dick Johnson had opened over him with about 25 to 30 laps remaining.
Well, 2 factors, tyres, definitely, and perhaps a little fatigue because Johnson elected to drive the entire race on his own. Now those 2 things combined may have very well cost him victory because with victory in sight, John Harvey has closed the gap, slipped by, taken the race lead, and for the second year in a row, the last lap board goes out to the Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodore, Johnny Harvey at the wheel, headed for victory in the CRC 300.
Over the top of Marlborough down into Dunlop Loop with a good feeling for John Harvey, the team manager for the Marlborough Holden dealer team, co-driver today with Peter Brock. The team has functioned perfectly. A 9 Camaro going through as working away at the back part of the course is John Harvey. Dick Johnson, who experienced more tyre wear than I think they'd allowed for in the final run to the flag, with an ailing car nursing it to the finishing line. They come into Mazda corner out of Mazda. Crowd starting to rise now as the comeback trail, and another win on the board for the Marlborough Holden dealer team is well and truly on the cards. Last corner at Winfield, down through the gears. Come out of here precisely and taking no chances whatsoever. Johnny Harvey, who's driven superbly today along with Peter Brock. The final corner through Breville, the front straightaway, the checkered flag unfolds, and the 1981 CRC goes to the Marlborough Holden dealer team of Peter Brock and John Harvey. Second place will go to Dick Johnson of Queensland, number 17, the Ford. Third place, 1 lap down behind the leaders, will be Alan Grice in the JPS car. 5.70 seconds, the difference between the first and second cars. The Gary Cook Warren Cullen Commodore finishes 4th. Steve Masterton in the Capri finishes 5th. Kevin Bartlett in the 9 Camaro finishes 6th. And then also rounding off the top 10 was the David Selden car, the Sutton's Isuzu, who managed to oust car number 48 and number 21. So Alan Grice comes into finish, I think a lap and maybe 20 seconds behind second placed Dick Johnson in 17. But an interesting race, and a race that is going to answer quite a few questions for the upcoming James Hardy 1000 Classic at Mount Panorama Bathurst on Sunday, October the 4th. Well, I think the people have seen here today, certainly an all-time record crowd for Amaroo Park. This fantastic dice that in and out of the pits that was, in fact, we believed, won in the pits for Dick Johnson. but was finally won on the racetrack by John Harvey. And an elated John Harvey comes in, the McLeod Mazda back behind him, and Dick Johnson still to finish. Checkered flag has already gone to our race winner. Here's Dick Johnson signalling. In fact, he has finished.
Peter Brock has got a flag of his own that he's going to wave when Harv brings the car up.
John Harvey about to pull up. Peter Brock, I think, is going to go for a victory lap with him. Dick Johnson still has enough rubber to make it to the finishing line, where I think a lot of people will be very anxious to look at the tyres. There's the rear outside on Dick Johnson's car. Peter Brock, quite delighted, climbs into the cockpit with John Harvey, congratulates him on a job well done. And the Marlborough Holden dealer team winning mood is back again as they look ahead to hopefully a trouble-free run at Mount Panorama. Well, crowd giving Dick Johnson a magnificent welcome back, and also congrats to John Harvey.
I haven't heard crowd response like this for many years, Mike. The whole of the valley here was shaking with the sound of the roar as the crowd was going wild when their favourites appeared. And let's wait and hear the noise as John Harvey still behind the wheel. Peter Brock carrying the checkered flag now to their final victory lap, and there's the crowd.
Well, you can see as they are taken off on their victory lap, Dick Johnson feels that at that slow pace he can also get a part of the action, and he's taken off behind them just to make sure the crowd realises there was a Ford there in contention all the way through. A checkered flag and an Australian flag for the Marlborough Holden dealer team. Dick Johnson, second in the race, third place to Alan Grice. We'll take a break and then come back with the presentation and more motor racing action live here at Amaroo Park. Well, part of this enormous crowd milling around the Masterton Homes presentation area here at Amaroo Park Raceway. They're all here to welcome to Victory Lane Peter Brock and John Harvey, and also pass on commiserations to the second place driver, Dick Johnson of Queensland. Well, the crowd is assembling out the front of the Masterton Homes area, as you can see at the moment, an enormous crowd here at Amaroo Park today. I think quite satisfied with a result between two professional racers who put it together well. Peter Brock and, of course, John Harvey, who drove the second leg of the race and managed to come up with a win. We'll go to the presentation area now and to Evan Green.
Well, the winners of the CRC 300, John Harvey and Peter Brock. John?
Well, thanks very much.
That's all you can say. I thought you'd be exhausted and wrung out.
No, I'm not really exhausted. That was purely a tactical race right from the start of the race. I know Peter was driving at just the speed where we were saving the tyres and saving the car, and I got in the car, although we had a really lousy pit stop.
I was going to say, how did you feel after the tangles that occurred there because of the car in front, which put you in a dreadful position?
I was pretty annoyed, actually, but I mean, that's the way you've got to wear it sometimes. You can't get them all smooth. We normally did them in about 40 seconds. I don't know how long that took, but my reaction to that was the first lap around the gap to Dick Johnson was something like 31 seconds. And I thought, well, Peter was able to get to him in the first session because of tyres, and I figured if I just kept at the same pace I was going at without wearing out tyres, I could probably get him at the end. And I could see the gap coming down a few tenths, then a second, then 2 seconds, and I thought, mate, I've got you. And
yeah, that's worried. Had me worried. I didn't know if Dick was driving for the flag to win by 5 seconds, or John, in fact, felt as if he did have him, but lo and behold, it really did happen.
Did you know that the Dick Johnson pit gave him a signal to come in to change tyres within the last 10 laps?
Well, Dick signalled the pits. I was standing at the fence and Dick went past coming in, and I had a board prepared for John, Dick in, but Dick elected to stay out, I imagine, to try and ward off any threat from Alan Grice. So Dick drove just to get the flag, and just not quite enough, but a magnificent race.
Well, now, what sort of complexion does this put on the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst on October the 4th?
Pretty good, I think.
Yeah, we're looking okay, but I think we need to do a bit of practice at the pits there and get all that organised. It wasn't really anyone's fault, just that circumstances went wrong, and I guess we've got to devise a way so we can always do those quick pit stops.
Well, it's been a magnificent race, and there are many smiles around, but I think the man with the biggest smile is Roy Facey from CRC, the sponsors. Roy, may I ask you to make the presentations to the winners?
Fine. Thanks very much, Evan. I'd like to congratulate you both. It was really a sponsors race because I'm sure that the racing drivers don't like to win races just like that. in the last 5 laps. Usually you like to stay ahead like you did last year. But a great race, brilliant teamwork, and congratulations.
Thanks.
Tremendous from CRC Chemicals. Tremendous. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I'd like to thank CRC too for backing this race. It's the second year again, and I hope you're here for many more years. We think your product's good too. We use it, I might add. And it's supporting motorsport in this manner. And I think that what we've seen today, Holden and Ford, our car with Dick Johnson's, I think that race this year, the James Hardy 1000, is going to be absolutely fantastic. I'd advise you all to get there. And if not, watch it on Channel 7. And today's was a great warmer, if you like, for what's going to happen in a couple of months' time. Thanks.
Fabulous. Yeah, tremendous.
There's champagne, and for those of you who don't know, in the front row here, I should warn you that it's traditional for the winners to douse the people with champagne. While you're wondering what to do, I'll call on Gary Wilkinson to talk to a man who so nearly was receiving the winners' awards. He put in an epic drive and was leading for a long, long way for, what, 150 laps? We'll bring up Dick Johnson.
Not like you to be shy, Fred.
It is
Oh,
Gary,
Dick.
isn't it?
Dick, it was a gamble, and it just didn't quite come off right at the close.
No, not quite, but we got a little closer this year. Maybe next year we might take it off, you never know. But Brocky's car is certainly motoring well, and I can't say a thing wrong about ours because it performed magnificently all day, and thanks very much to the crew who sort of put it together. I'd also like to congratulate Peter and John for doing a fine effort, and to CRC for putting on this race every year. I sincerely hope that they do the same again next year. And to all our sponsors, Palmer Tube Mills, Valvoline and Motorcraft, thank you very much indeed. And I sincerely hope I get another one before Bathurst.
There's no need to say that tyres were a factor, which they obviously were, Dick, but what about fatigue? Was that a factor? You did elect to drive the race on your own. Did that come into it?
No, I'm physically fit enough. Well, I think I am. I think it's just your mental attitude, really. But I sort of run every day and do a few things like this. But physically, I felt great, and I could have kept going at that pace if the tyres had held out. But unfortunately, they just didn't quite make it.
OK, well, Roy Facey from CRC is here, and I'm sure he'd like to shake your hand, Dick, because you certainly put on a great performance.
Tremendous race. I really thought you had it won. And we were just standing here, and I thought, my God, you lost it around that bend there. We didn't know the trauma that was going on in the cabin.
Alan Grice, of course, finished in third position outright today and also won the six-cylinder class. I don't know where Grice is, hiding in the background. Another shy man. Alan, quite a performance because the car was pretty late getting it together and you had to come from rear of the grid, and obviously in a field as strong as this, that wasn't an easy task.
No, I think from here on, I think I might get that in the back of the neck. From here on, I think our car can only improve. We just need a bit of power to run with the front Commodore and Falcon, and you know, hopefully we'll have a little bit more. But I think the thing that we've been banking on, the reliability of the BMW has shown out. And, you know, as you said, we started behind the 8-ball this weekend. I think we can only improve, and I'd like to thank my crew for their very good stop, which got us up a place today, and for the motor car.
OK, for that victory, on behalf of CRC from Roy Facey.
Tremendous race.
Also, let's bring in the winners of the four-cylinder class, and I think, if memory serves me correct, they finished in 8th position outright in the Gemini Isuzu. David Selden and Phil Ward. Fantastic effort, boys.
Thank you very much. I'd like to. I think a lot of the thanks must go particularly to George Shepherd and his crew there, Peter and Bruce and Mick and Kevin and all the fellows who helped put the car together. It's a beautiful little car, and you know, the little Sutton's Gemini went particularly well. We were very, very pleased. It didn't put a foot wrong all day. It was very slippery out there, I might add, and we tried to keep out of the way of the big boys as much as possible. We got a new sponsor, actually, only on Friday. We didn't get time to get 2Day FM's name on the car for the race, but 2Day FM will be with us for Bathurst, and along with Sutton's. And, you know, we're looking forward to Suttons. And, of course, we had a lot of help from Philly, did a marvellous backup job. It's a bit different, too, after his big sports sedan to drive such a little car. But
well, you're giving him a big rap. We might let him accept the trophy from Roy Facey from CRC.
I'd like to present this to you from CRC Chemicals. Fine race. Thank you very much, David.
For Channel 7 viewers, here's Mike Raymond.
Thanks very much, Gary. Well, there you can see the scene here at Amaroo Park Raceway, the curtain raiser to what everyone considers the great race, the James Hardie 1000. The race, of course, this year that will be seen throughout Australia on Sunday, October the 4th from Mount Panorama at Bathurst, that will bring together all of the superstars of Australian and international motorsport. It promises to be a race that will be fought as a sprint direct from the Grand Prix circuits of Europe, comes back to Australia. Australia's world champion, Alan Jones, to drive a Commodore in the race. Alan Jones, who won the World Championship last year, and this year is seeing it slip away from him. The third-placed Australian in this year's Indianapolis 500, Vern Shupin, a driver with vast experience at Mount Panorama at Bathurst. From North America will come David Hobbs as co-driver to Alan Grice, and Alan Moffat returns to Mount Panorama in the new Mazda team. Alan Moffat, a man who is no stranger, John Harvey, the winner of today's CRC Chemicals race, and his co-driver Peter Brock. Also, our second-placed, or our first-place driver last year for the past 2 years, Jim Richards, and Alan Grice, who was third here today. And the hero of them all, Dick Johnson, the Ford-supported man from Queensland, and Big Rev Kev Bartlett. They'll all be coming for the big race, the James Hardie 1000 Classic at Mount Panorama, Bathurst. You can see it on the 7 network throughout Australia on Sunday, October the 4th. We'll take a break and return for the TR7 Pro-Am final here at Amaroo Park. Track now for the Barclays TR7 Pro-Am Series. This is the final. Car number 7, Bob Morris. Starting alongside of Bob on the front row of the grid will be Jimmy Richards, number 15. Two men who are virtually unbeaten in 2 years of competition in the TR7 Series here. Next on the grid, number 1, Colin Bond, and number 17, Dick Johnson. The third row of the grid sees car number 56, Gary Walden, and number 12, Terry Daly. Row number 7, 22, is Peter Hopwood, and number 5, Ian Gagan. Right, behind them, Rob Luck in 69, Mike Griffin, Ed White, Carol Barker Aldous, Chris Hones, Glenn Malloy, and Alan Springett. That's the field for the Barclays TR7 Pro-Am Series, the grand final at Amaroo Park. Flag in the air. They're racing, and getting off very smartly indeed was Jimmy Richards, and making a bold move here from the third row, I think, was Colin Bond. Just look at the field as they head up Bitchapave Hill for the first time before a tremendous turnout of spectators here today at Amaroo Park. Bob Morris, though, over the top of Bitchapave for the first time, and I think perhaps he's managed to take the lead. Over into the left-hander at Dunlop Loop, and it's Colin Bond who makes a very bold manoeuvre on the inside of Richards, and I think that has probably advanced him to second in the pack.
From the middle of the grid, Mike Griffin made a bold manoeuvre in car 30 and probably has earned himself a 1-minute penalty as he passed about 3 cars before the flag had dropped. There's a lot of smoke and dust up there, maybe no more than tyre smoke. No, it's a spin smoke from, it could in fact be the Mike Griffin, the one who was trying to make up for his minute penalty. So Mike Griffin having a fairly disastrous sort of race.
Okay, slipping and sliding from Honda Corner, heading down to the right-hander at Winfield, and it's Bobby Morris in number 7, Colin Bond plays second, Jim Richards is third. And then right behind them, Gary Walden, Terry Daly also well in contention. Not even one lap completed, and look at the line astern as they come out of Winfield, heading up the short chute, heading in the direction of the front straightaway once again.
My heavens, there's no doubt that Bobby Morris is out to make a point. He's really opened up quite a lead for this sort of racing, going as hard as he can. You can see him there with his helmet urging the car along. He's in car number 7 and he's in front.
Morris from Colin Bond, then Jim Richards, Dick Johnson. It's going to be interesting to see the battle in this race a little further back in the field, you know, between Gary Walden and Peter Hopwood. Somebody attempted to play peacemaker and ask them to shake hands on the grid before they got underway in this race, and they both refused. They've both had encounters in the running of this series earlier in the year, and there's no love lost between the pair.
Close encounters of the TR7 kind at Amaroo Park. We'll go back to the race leader. It's Bobby Morris, number 7. Doing it well, Colin Bond, placed in second. Jimmy Richards, I think, in fourth at this moment after losing one spot in the pack. And then you can see Peter Hopwood very closely right on the tail. Dick Johnson is also well positioned, back in fourth at this stage. There's Bobby Morris, though, down through the gears.
Peter Hopwood is up in 5th spot. And mentioned that gentleman just a few moments ago.
Richards trying desperately too, Gary, to get by Colin Bond. They're battling for second place, and you can see how close he is. He'll make a move, no doubt, as they go up CRC straight. Look at that.
That just helped him up the hill. Nothing wrong with that at all. Two drivers who rely on one another with great respect. And we'll wait and see if Richards can effect an inside pass. I don't think he will. Morris in front, as you can see. Bond still holding down second. Jimmy Richards will try and cut the corner to get underneath on the exit. Can he do it?
Yes, he
door
can.
handle to door handle, side by side, heading down the back part of the course. Bond gets a wheel up like a demented dog, and Richards down the inside.
And it's still side by side. Bond's got the hard line now, and Richards should get by here as they come through Mazda. They're going towards Honda, and Richards is in front. He's in second spot now, and after
there's
a
Dick
spin
Johnson.
behind. Johnson's gone into the bank. Up and over goes Johnson.
Dick Johnson, who made a manoeuvre, got clipped on the front end, but Dick Johnson of Queensland.
Richards has gone cross-country in the meantime, and Bond has got through him again to take second place behind Bobby Morris in all that confusion.
There's Dick. You can see the helmet. He's strapped into the car, and I think he's just trying to release himself to climb out through the window.
He's still in a very difficult position. You can see his feet coming out, and cars are going by in the foreground. The marshals are waving their flags. There's a service vehicle coming towards him. There's one of the marshals there helping him. He's caught in the car. The roof has come down a little bit, as you can see. He's okay. But he couldn't get out. And Johnson is out. And so, well, Dick Johnson, this year's national touring car champion.
And not a rock in sight.
With a race that he won't want to remember. He went looking for them then and went up the bank. He just lost the car coming down. Whether there was a touch we couldn't see, as we didn't see the incident that led to it, but he came sideways. I suspect they hit together. There were several cars side by side, and Johnson was probably put slightly out of kilter. He's holding his arms now, whether in embarrassment or whether he has got some bruising, it's hard to say. But he went into the bank. He disturbed a few rocks. It was while they were braking heavily for Honda, the corner here, and the field's about to come descending on them again, and you'll see cars flooding by now.
I think he was in fourth place at the time, just behind Colin Bond and Jim Richards, and had Peter Hopwood pressing him. Peter Hopwood and Rob Luck pressing him pretty hard. It might have been a touch just as they came around that corner.
Yeah, well, the series was sponsored by a bank, and that's what turned him over when he went into it. Dug his own rocks there. This is now lap number 5 just being completed here, and it's Bobby Morris leading this Barclays TR7 Pro-Am Series final.
Well, Bobby Morris and Jim Richards, I don't think they've lost a race between them at Amaroo Park in the Barclays Series. There's Peter Hopwood starting to make an inside gesture now as they go over the top past Marlboroughs and down into Dunlop Loop. So Morris with that winning feeling. Richards, he's starting to get quite businesslike about wanting to take this final this afternoon.
Hopwood's got by into third place too.
Yes, the field was a bit ruffled by Johnson's exit from the race. He sent them fairly wide, and it gave Hopwood a fair advantage. There's Bond coming back on the inside again, but Hopwood is holding the line on the outside, and that's not a good line, as we saw before.
Colin just moved him over a fraction or two, and they're all obviously slowing down as they acknowledge the flags, where Dick Johnson's cross-stroked TR7 lies up on the approach to Honda corner. Meanwhile, they get back into action.
Terry Daly is very close behind. He's the third of those cars, and just behind in another group of cars we haven't seen too much. We've got Rob Luck leading in car number 69, just coming into view there. One of the leading amateurs in the series.
The private battle between Peter Hopwood and Gary Walden didn't eventuate, or hasn't eventuated, because Walden's well back in about 9th spot at the present time. And Peter Hopwood is up running 4th.
Well, it's been a top series so far, despite the fact only 2 drivers have shared the wins between them, Jimmy Richards and Bobby Morris. But it's been fairly easy on the cars too. I think Dick Johnson, of course, and Pete Gagan, who inverted one in practice here early in the season, but have been a most competitive series and a very interesting series as well.
Hopwood has got by Colin Bond again, and making sure he doesn't leave room for Bond to get through as they go through the dust of the cars just in front, where Bobby Morris is still leading Jim Richards, is making desperate moves to try and get by. There's Rob Luck just coming into view there, lifting a wheel up as he dogs his way through the corner just ahead of Pete Gagan, with car number 56, Gary Walden, behind him. 4 laps to go. Hopwood still leads Bond. This is the battle for 3rd place, and Daly is right behind them. Cars come up the straight, a rather disconsolate Dick Johnson is walking across the grass there, making the walk that no driver likes to take. There he is now, talking to one of the marshals. Rescue vehicles in the background from the Australian Racing Drivers Club.
Well, he takes it all in his stride, whether it's a win or a loss, but it's good to see Dick Johnson able to walk away from that incident early in this race. Okay, Bobby Morris still the race leader. Jimmy Richardson second. Peter Hopwood is third. Daly also up in contention there. Actually, they've closed right up behind our third place driver and the highest placed rookie in the event, of course, at this stage, Peter Hopwood.
Colin Bond now giving him as hard a time as he can and getting as close as he can. He doesn't quite have the same legs as Hopwood apparently, but he's trying to get out, get by, and Daly's there, and Colin's going everywhere except through the boot to try and get by. He'll make a braking manoeuvre on the inside as they come in towards Winfield. And Hopwood locks up. Hopwood's gone.
Yeah, Hopwood locked the brake up, got the tail loose, and that was enough for Colin Bond.
But didn't he recover quickly?
Yes.
I thought he was off and into the fence, but he didn't lose much time while he's lost his place and while Daly is now shoving his nose in there. He got back again. That's a remarkable bit of recovery from Peter Hopwood. I thought he was out and gone, and that was incredible the way he held it together. Lost the position, but he's back again, and now he's challenging Colin Bond. And Bond, who must have thought, right, that's the end of him. If he just looks left, you'll see that he's slightly in front.
Okay, well, Bond, of course, has the inside line to the turn, puts a wheel up, and Hopwood goes a bit of rally crossing. We'll try and get the edge coming out of the corner. Forced to tap the brakes that time, really squared the corner, but he's really in hot pursuit of Colin Bond. Bond with a wealth of experience on the dirt and the rocks and the pavement, and he's got a pretty tough customer to pass there, Peter Hopwood.
I've never seen drivers ever try and cut corners as substantially as these fellas are. They're putting more than half the chassis off the road in a few places to both make sure no one gets inside them and to take the shortest possible line. It might be quickest, but it's probably the most effective.
Bobby Morris still a clear leader. Jim Richardson second, and we're holding on the dice for third. There's Morris, number 7.
Richards has caught him a little bit, but it's only you can see it's the gap is probably enough to leave Morris reasonably contented, even though there's no doubt that Richards has halved the distance between the two over the last couple of laps. But the close racing is going on in this group here, with now Colin Bond pulling away from Hopwood. He has Rob Luck with the Playboy car up behind him, having disposed of Daly, I think it is. So it's Bond, then Hopwood. Bond lifting the wheel up there. Hopwood taking a slightly cleaner and slightly wider line.
Well, joining us after adding to the thrills and spills early in the event is Dick Johnson. Dick, the eyeballs all look straight?
Oh, yeah, everything's under control, Mike.
What happened, Dick? Do you remember?
Well, yeah, sure.
Do you know, maybe I should say, because often they're fairly confusing things.
I'm always in full control of my senses. But down the back there through the fast sweeper, there was Jim and Colin having a bit of a go, and I thought, well, here's a pretty good opportunity. So I slid down the inside of them, and what happened then was I touched one of the cars and away we went.
Well, it was a wild ride.
Oh, yeah. It's the first time I've ever been upside down, I tell you.
The first time, is it?
Yeah, and the last, I hope.
Oh, right. Terry Daly and Rob Luck just changing places there, as you saw, as the last lap sign goes out for the field. And you can see how much that Jim Richards has closed the gap. Richards, the man who leads the series from Bob Morris. This is the final in the Barclays TR7 Pro-Am series, and Richards really has made up a lot of ground in this last lap, but I don't think he's going to be close enough to get by Morris, but goodness me, Dick Johnson, hasn't he made up ground?
Yes, he has. Jim drives these things extremely well, extremely well.
A bit like a luxury Rolls Royce in New Zealand, of course.
He drives anything very well, Jim, but something that's very equal, he seems to have the advantage over everyone else.
Well, he's a good driver, and he's putting a ton of pressure on Bobby Morris, who's got his rear windows just full of one Jimmy Richards on number 15, but the gap is probably going to prove a little too short, although Richards can wind it up and try and duck to the inside. But Morris, I think, is going to lead it wire to wire to take the final today of the Barclays TR7 Pro-Am Series. The win goes to Bobby Morris in 7. Second to Jimmy Richards in number 15, and Colin Bond will probably get third, just clear of Peter Hopwood. Well, there's the checkered flag, and it's been a good series, and of course that winning run that started here 2 years ago by Jimmy Richards and Bob Morris, they have not been beaten in a TR7 Pro-Am race here at Amaroo Park. So the winning feeling, the winning number is 7, and the winning driver is Bobby Morris.